Chapter 394. After leaving the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force, Han Shuo had originally intended to return to his own mansion. However, halfway through, he spied through the mystical demons that Emily and Phoebe had walked out of her chamber together. Contrary to Han Shuo's expectations, Emily's eyes were red, and she had faintly cried. Phoebe, who had originally come to denounce Emily, wasn't as unforgiving as Han Shuo had imagined. Instead, she continuously tried to persuade Emily. The two held hands, and were even more friendly than when they were in the Valley of Sunshine. The red-eyed Emily continuously wiped the corners of her eyes with a tissue, her face filled with sorrow. Phoebe gently held Emily's arm in a friendly manner and sighed. "Elder sister, I was rude. I didn't know that elder sister's life was actually like this." "Forget it, Phoebe. It's already not easy for you to forgive elder sister. I am indeed responsible for this matter. A freak combination of factors just had to happen." Sigh. Emily gently wiped the corners of her eyes as she confided to Phoebe. All right, we're almost at the door. Elder sister should return to the room and not let others see your current appearance. Everything was that fellow's fault. It has nothing to do with you, elder sister. I'll just settle the score with him. I shouldn't have messed around with elder sister." Phoebe persuaded Emily, forcing her to return to the room. "Thank you, Phoebe. You're a good girl. No wonder he likes you so much." After entering the room, Emily held Phoebe's hand and said sincerely, "Sigh, I didn't expect elder sister's life to be even more bitter than mine. I originally thought that as the daughter-in-law of the Betteridge family, and with a brother who wields great power, you would definitely be much happier than me. Forget it. Let's not talk about it anymore. I'm going back first. It's getting late. Elder sister should rest well." After saying this, Phoebe let go of Emily's tightly clasped hands and walked away from Emily. Han Shuo, who had clearly seen the conversation between the two through a mystical demon, was momentarily filled with doubts. He had originally thought that even if the two of them didn't make a scene, they would at least be at each other's throats and taunts. Who would have thought that this would be the final outcome? Han Shuo changed his direction midway and headed straight for the Betteridge family. Emily, who had just cried, needed consolation. No matter what the situation was, Han Shuo did not wish for Emily to get hurt. He had already made a decision in his heart, so his speed was very fast. Han Shuo had been busy in the academy for a long time. The sky had already darkened by the time he came out, and there were fewer and fewer people on the streets now. The night had silently descended. Han Shuo was like a ghost in the dark night, a wisp of smoke drifting along the desolate streets as he silently flew towards the Betteridge family. Han Shuo did not pay any attention to Phoebe, who had boarded the carriage and left. He only separated out a mystical demon to keep an eye on her movements and safety. From the conversation just now, it seemed that Phoebe's emotions were still rather stable, and there shouldn't be any problems. Only the red-eyed Emily needed consolation the most at this time. Han Shuo naturally knew what was more important. The Betteridge family's defenses could be considered tight. However, to Han Shuo, who possessed a mystical demon, these defenses were similarly of little use. Easily avoiding the guards, Han Shuo silently arrived at Emily's door. Emily's magical barrier was still present in the room. Han Shuo did not forcefully barge in, fearing that Emily would misunderstand and resist. Instead, he lightly pressed against Emily's door and knocked on it. "Who is it?" Emily called out softly from within the room as the sound of footsteps gradually approached. "It's me," Han Shuo shouted in a low voice. Emily's footsteps had obviously quickened, and she had already arrived in front of the door in the span of a breath. After pulling the door open, Emily saw that it was indeed Han Shuo. Her bright red eyes suddenly brightened as she extended her head to look left and right. After confirming that there was no one around, Emily pulled Han Shuo inside. "Why are you here? This is the Betteridge family. What if someone sees us?" After pulling Han Shuo inside, Emily hurriedly shut the door tightly and added a soundproof barrier before asking Han Shuo, "I'm worried about you." Han Shuo suddenly pulled Emily into his embrace and softly said, "I'm fine. Phoebe just left this place. Did you see her?" After being hugged tightly by Han Shuo, Emily felt her heart calm down as she replied softly, "No, after she found out about this matter today, I was afraid that she would make a big fuss, so I did not follow her. However, I have been paying attention to the situation here. Did Phoebe do anything to you? Did you cry?" Han Shua's heart ached as he reached out his hand to caress the corner of Emily's eye and said gently, "Hee, it's fine as long as I know that you are worried about me. Phoebe is a good girl. She did not come over and make a big fuss with me. On the contrary, after we had a heart-to-heart talk, Phoebe continuously persuaded me that your eyesight is not bad." Being treated tenderly by Han Shua, Emily suddenly felt that all the grievances she had previously suffered were all worth it. Han Shua did not say anything more. He hugged Emily and kissed her. At this time, Emily also needed Han Shua's comfort. She could not help but respond enthusiastically. She took the initiative to help Han Shua undress. She led Han Shua to the inner chamber as they kissed intensely. Han Shua could feel Emily's fiery passion today. Out of a kind of compensation, Han Shua deliberately fawned on Emily. His big hands moved gently and considerately on Emily's body. His lips kept kissing with Emily. When Emily had difficulty breathing, he whispered some gentle and pleasant words in Emily's ear. "Brian. Oh, Brian." Emily moaned in a low voice. It seemed that she was very emotional. When Han Shua's big hands were kneading Emily's full and smooth buttocks, Emily had already taken the initiative to help Han Shua take off all her clothes. Suddenly, she fell back on her pink, soft big bed. Her jade body was spread out in front of Han Shua. Her almond-shaped eyes blurred as she looked at Han Shua. She softly panted and said tenderly, "Brian, I don't want your gentleness. Be rough." Han Shua was stunned. He immediately roared and threw himself at Emily. He did not continue to be gentle and protective of the fairer sex. Instead, he treated Emily fiercely. Today, Emily was even crazier than usual. She intensely catered to Han Shua until her delicate body could no longer bear Han Shua's violent storm. In the end, she directly fell into a deep sleep without a trace of strength. Han Shua looked at Emily, who had fallen asleep like a pear blossom. He suddenly felt a sense of guilt in his heart. Emily was actually Han Shua's first woman. Han Shua raped Emily from the beginning. Especially for a long time, Han Shua only treated Emily as a tool to satisfy his lust. As Emily quietly sacrificed for Han Shua gradually developed feelings for her. However, because of Emily's special identity, Han Shua did not give Emily a title. In principle, Phoebe should be the target of his crusade. Because of her special identity, Emily was the woman who had followed Han Shua from the beginning. She was the real victim. Since Emily and Han Shua got together, she had always been thinking for Han Shua. She put Han Shua as the center and sacrificed everything. Looking at the sleeping woman in front of him for a long time, Han Shua unconsciously fell into memories. The more he recalled the past with Emily, the more guilty Han Shua felt. "Sigh, I owe you too much. It's been hard on you." Han Shua sighed softly. He gently touched Emily's face and muttered to himself, "I did everything willingly, and I never blamed you. Also, I know you are very good to me. You don't have to feel guilty." Suddenly, Emily's lips curled into a blissful smile. After saying that, she opened her big, bright eyes. "Hey, why did you wake up so quickly? Why didn't you sleep a little longer?" Han Shua saw that Emily had woken up. He couldn't help but frown and softly scold. "It's fine. After making love with you, I could feel the mysterious power you left in my body. This power helped me improve my body. That's why I was able to recover so quickly. Brian, really, I'm willing to do all of this. I know that your heart aches for me, but as long as you love me, that's enough. I don't expect too much from you. After all, my identity is there." Emily reached out a hand to caress Han Shua's hard face and said softly with a smile, "You will definitely have an official identity. This day won't be too far away. I swear I will give it to you. This is what you deserve." Han Shua looked at Emily, who knew how much she had sacrificed, and promised in a low and powerful voice, "Brian, do you want to know Phoebe's attitude towards the matter between us?" Emily looked happy. She lightly kissed Han Shua's chest. Then, She smiled and asked Han Shua. No matter how Phoebe treats this matter, it won't affect our relationship. Even if she firmly disagrees, it won't change this. Don't worry. I will talk to Phoebe about this matter. Han Shua promised again. He was determined to not let Emily feel wronged. Hee, I'm really happy to hear that. Emily was happy. Then, she said, but Phoebe agrees. Chapter 395. Agree? Agree to what? Han Shua stared blankly and asked in confusion. Of course I agree to the matter between you and me, Emily exclaimed happily and explained. I told Phoebe everything about the two of us. I especially emphasized the fact that I couldn't show my face due to my identity. Also, I told her about how my husband suddenly died on the battlefield when I had just joined the Betteridge family. Phoebe even tried to persuade me for quite a while after listening to me. Han Shua was stunned. He suddenly felt that Phoebe was indeed reasonable. However, Emily had stayed in the Dark Mantle for so long and was indeed very intelligent. To be able to make Phoebe acknowledge her identity with just a few words was enough to prove Emily's ability. Han Shua finally relaxed after hearing Emily's words. He lightly kissed Emily with a smile and said, Emily, you're really capable. All right. Don't try to bewitch me anymore. Emily joyfully pushed Han Shua and said, It's getting late. You shouldn't stay here anymore. I still have to go greet father. Hearing Emily mention the Betteridge family's patriarch, Han Shua thought for a moment and asked Emily, Oh right, which prince does Han favor? I don't know. Perhaps it's because father has retired from the military for too long. When the empire was in turmoil, father didn't appear in the eyes of the empire's military and government. He also didn't talk to me about the matters between the princes. Emily replied with a frown when she saw that Han Shua was talking about serious matters. After a moment of silence, Han Shua said to Emily, If old Han talks about these matters or has plans to lean towards one side, it's best if you advise him not to act rashly in the next few days, lest he leads the Betteridge family down a wrong path. Emily was startled and asked in surprise, Why would you say that? No one is optimistic about Lawrence. However, if nothing unexpected happens, the throne should be Lawrence's. For the next few days, just wait and see. I think it won't be long before His Majesty makes a big move. Han Shua discussed with His Majesty Uhtred and understood that Lawrence's situation would change greatly. That was why he reminded Emily. Are you sure this news is true? Emily clearly knew how important this news was. She asked Han Shua with a solemn expression. Nodding his head affirmatively, Han Shua said, I went to the palace today and heard it from His Majesty's own mouth. There's no way this is wrong. In that case, I have to go out immediately. Not only my father, but my brother as well. I have to tell them immediately. In addition, there are some friends who are watching, and I must warn them as soon as possible. After Han Shua finished speaking, Emily had already started to put on her clothes, her expression somewhat anxious. This matter concerned every noble in the Lancelot Empire. Every noble with status could forget about staying out of this matter. If they made a wrong choice, they could lose the prosperity and decline of a family for 100 years. They had no choice but to treat this matter with caution. Seeing Emily so anxious, Han Shua could understand. Standing up, Han Shua gently helped Emily put on her silk robes. He also helped Emily tidy up her messy long hair, which was a rare occurrence. He even helped her put on some rouge amidst Emily's blissful sweet smile. Finally, he opened his mouth and said, All right, be careful on the road. Emily obediently waited for Han Shua to finish helping her with everything. Only then did she move her fragrant lips closer to Han Shua and gave him a light kiss. She smiled coquettishly and said, I know. Don't stay here for too long. This is the Betteridge family. I'll be leaving now. Han Shua replied with a smile and tidied up his clothes. When Emily walked over to old Han's side, Han Shua silently left the area. As soon as Han Shua returned to the mansion, he immediately sensed the dense killing intent on Balan's body. With just a glance, Han Shua had already spotted Balans, who was hibernating in the remote shadows. Lord Marquis. Before Han Shua had even entered the room, Balans suddenly called out softly and walked out from the shadows. Within Han Shua's mansion, there weren't any powerful guards. Apart from Han Shuo, who was an important character, there wasn't anyone else worthy of Han Shuo's worry. Therefore, he didn't arrange any defensive formations. An expert like Balins naturally wouldn't be able to be seen by ordinary people. Wearing a gray robe, Balins walked out from the shadows. He had a sinister and terrifying face and a dense killing intent. An ordinary person would definitely feel fear upon seeing him. "Let's talk inside." Han Shuo shot a glance at Balins and replied with a smile before walking straight into the room. Balins similarly followed him in. After entering the room, Han Shuo used the mystical demons to survey the surroundings and didn't find any suspicious characters in the surroundings. Phoebe had also left Han Shuo's mansion without waiting for Han Shuo and had already returned to the Buzzed Merchant Guild. After sitting down in the room, Han Shuo smiled at Balins and asked, "How is it? Have you thought it through?" Nodding his head, Balins had an excited expression as he replied, "Yes, I want to learn that martial technique from you. Lord Corel has already agreed. It's just that Lord wants to meet you." Han Shuo wasn't surprised at all. In this world, only Han Shuo could bring what Balins needed. With Balins' obsession with this martial technique, he would definitely agree to Han Shuo's suggestion. However, what Han Shuo didn't expect was Carol's invitation. He didn't understand why Corel wanted to meet him. After staring blankly for a moment, Han Shuo frowned as he looked at Balins and asked in astonishment, "What does Mr. Corel want to meet me for?" Shaking his head, Balins replied, "I'm not too sure either." "Is that so?" Han Shuo muttered to himself, "When will it be? Where do I meet him?" "If you're free, Lord wants me to bring you to meet him." Balins replied respectfully, "In that case, there's no time like the present. Let's do it now." "Oh, it's getting late. Could it be that Lord Corel is already resting?" Han Shuo intended to go now, but changed his mind after thinking about it. "It's fine. Lord will only rest very late at night. If you're free, we can leave now." Balins replied, "All right, let's go then." Han Shuo said straightforwardly before heading towards the Northern Rose Garden with Balins. Under the dim moonlight, Han Shuo, who had just returned to the mansion, went to the Northern Rose Garden with Balins. Balins' many years of experience as an assassin had caused his speed to be as fast as lightning. In addition, he was used to walking in areas where light couldn't reach. Basically, most people wouldn't be able to discover his presence. Han Shuo, whose demonic arts had entered the separate demon realm, had a few mystical demons spying on his surroundings. With a few mystical demons keeping a panoramic view of the surroundings, Han Shuo was like a drifting spirit, openly roaming the streets without fear of being discovered. As his speed was similarly fast, Han Shuo's shadow was like a light wisp of smoke brushing past. Compared to Balins' cautiousness, Han Shuo appeared calm and unruffled. With the mystical demons, Han Shuo could easily avoid areas where people roamed. Moreover, he wasn't far from Balins and wasn't left behind by Balins in the slightest. Only when they entered the Northern Rose Garden did the two simultaneously slow down. In the dead of night, it was the most suitable time to carry out some debauchery. On the streets leading to the Northern Rose Garden, gorgeous carriages were stealthily approaching, with a few stewards and servants gracefully leading the way. Their destination was the Rose Garden. As a famous brothel in the Lancelot Empire, the Northern Rose Garden's business was extremely good. With Sacred Swordmaster Corel overseeing this place, the safety of this place was second to none in the Empire. Lawrence was also extremely adept at management, forcefully turning the Northern Rose Garden into a nest of ecstasy. It was precisely because of the sudden increase in the flow of people around the Northern Rose Garden that Han Shuo and Balins had no choice but to slow down. Balins was incomparably familiar with this place. He brought Han Shuo directly towards the back door. The back door of the Rose Garden was relatively remote. Generally, only internal personnel would come here, or they would receive some sensitive figures. Those nobles seeking pleasure wouldn't pass through here. Han Shuo and Balins, on the other hand, were happy and relaxed. "Balins, since you've decided to join my faction, there are some things I need to explain to you first." As Han Shuo and Balins walked towards the back door, Han Shuo smiled at Balins and said, "Please speak." Balins' tone towards Han Shuo was very respectful. "Balins, don't be too courteous. In the future, You don't need to call me Marquis. You can just call me Senior. Our sect is called the Heavenly Demon Sect. There aren't many people in the entire profound continent who know of us. Our master was once an expert from another plane, and only came to the profound continent by chance. After teaching me this martial technique, he turned into a demon and left. Han Shua lowered his voice and made up a series of lies. Ballins listened attentively. After waiting for Han Shua to finish his series of narration, Ballins said with astonishment and excitement, I didn't expect Master to actually be so amazing. He's actually an expert from another plane. No wonder he has such a miraculous martial technique that has never been heard of in the entire profound continent. It's such a pity that I don't have the chance to meet Master. Hee. Master's strength is unimaginable to the average person. I will teach you the martial technique of the Heavenly Demon Sect on Master's behalf. With your aptitude, you will definitely achieve great things. Don't worry, the application and concealment of the killing intent will be the most basic Heavenly Demon secret art. Not only will you be able to quickly grasp it, you will also possess even more powerful killing moves. Han Shua solemnly vowed to bewitch Ballins. The demonic art that Han Shua imparted to Ballins was called the God-slaying demonic way. It wasn't considered an orthodox cultivation method for demonic cultivators. Even if Ballins cultivated it to the extreme, he wouldn't be able to reach Han Shua's achievements. However, for Ballins, if he could familiarize himself with and master this demonic art, his strength would indeed improve substantially. However, this kind of improvement was a little like pulling a seedling to help it grow. It was purely using the dense killing intent surrounding Ballins to greatly improve his strength. However, it couldn't be like the demonic art that Han Shua cultivated step by step, which had unlimited possibilities for improvement. What Han Shua needed was a junior who could help him eradicate dissidents, and not someone who could contend with him in demonic arts. Therefore, no matter how much Ballins grew, he wouldn't be a threat to Han Shua's position. Senior, thank you. When Ballins was about to enter the Rose Garden, he respectfully bowed to Han Shua. Han Shua wasn't in a hurry to enter the Rose Garden. After receiving Ballins' bow, he smiled and said, You haven't officially entered the sect yet, so I can't immediately teach you the Heavenly Demon Divine Art. After I meet Mr. Corell, I will help you handle the initiation ceremony. After you officially join our Heavenly Demon Sect, I will help you be reborn and then teach you the martial techniques of our sect. I will listen to Senior. Ballins was already quite old, but he was still respectful to Han Shua and didn't dare to slight him in the slightest. Smiling and nodding, Han Shua said, All right, bring me into the Rose Garden. Ballins brought Han Shua all the way to the secret room that Lawrence had entered previously. After opening the passage, Ballins brought Han Shua all the way down. After passing through some complicated paths, Ballins finally brought Han Shua to the spacious space where he met Sacred Swordmaster Corell last time. In a spacious white space, Sacred Swordmaster Corell was sitting on a boulder. Although the tall and big Carol's hair was white, he was full of vigor. His kind gaze was leisurely looking forward. After seeing Han Shua enter, Corell smiled and said, Little fellow, you really aren't simple. After Ballins brought Han Shua over, he himself withdrew. Currently, only Han Shua and Corell were left in the entire space. When Han Shua saw Corell praising him so much, he couldn't help but smile and say, You're overpraising me? You gave that divine weapon, Starry Sky, to Phoebe. Hee. It's good that you have this intention, very good. Corell smiled and said, As for the matter of you teaching Ballins, I won't ask. You don't have to worry. I have never treated Ballins as a servant. He has always had his own freedom. This time, he was so excited to learn martial arts from you. You must have something that attracted him. I will respect his decision. Then, why did you summon me here? Han Shua's expression relaxed as he asked with a smile, I only wanted to see how the old astrologer Madame Grace predicted that you would bring prosperity to the Lancelot Empire. What exactly do you intend to do for the Lancelot Empire? Carol's eyes brightened as he stared at Han Shua and said with a smile. Han Shua was suddenly enlightened. He finally understood why Uhtred would speak and behave in such an odd manner. Chapter 396. So everything was because of old astrologer Grace's divination. It seems that I will really become a noble of the Lancelot Empire in the future. Last time at the Dark Mantle headquarters, Grace had looked at me with such a peculiar gaze. Could it be that she had seen something at that time? After hearing Carol's words, Han Shuo suddenly understood something. He creased his brows and thought for a while before smiling bitterly at Carel and said, "To be honest, I've only just learned of this news. I don't have any intentions of doing anything for the Lancelot Empire. I'm only thinking of what I should do for myself." Carel laughed involuntarily when he saw Han Shuo's honest reply. Perhaps, when you're helping yourself, you've unknowingly helped the Lancelot Empire complete the change of authority and complete the expansion of its territory. For example, you helped Lawrence seize the throne, or your ambitious conquest of the 7 Grand Duchies. These are actually your own actions, but the final result is that you've changed the structure of the Lancelot Empire. After hearing Carol's words, Han Shuo couldn't help but ponder for a while before suddenly realizing that Carol's words were reasonable. When he descended into this world, he was considered a citizen of the Lancelot Empire. Han Shuo felt that his life in this country wasn't bad. He also had friends and loved ones in this country. In this way, while Han Shuo realized his ambitions, he could also be considered to have helped the Lancelot Empire. Haha, a great personage is indeed a great personage. What you said is indeed reasonable. Han Shuo looked at Carel and complimented him without the slightest bit of concealment. When Carel saw Han Shuo flattering him so brazenly, he looked at Han Shuo with a somewhat strange expression. A trace of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said to Han Shuo, "Phoebe is my most beloved disciple. Your relationship with Phoebe can be considered to be settled. In addition, Lawrence is also my disciple, so we aren't considered outsiders. There isn't much difference between Balins following you and me. I'll tell you some things. Elder, feel free to speak of your teachings. I will definitely remember your words." Originally, Han Shuo was a little worried that Carel wouldn't let Balins learn martial arts with him. Now that he heard Carol's words, he felt that it was right. With Carol's relationship with Phoebe and Lawrence, he and Han Shuo really weren't considered outsiders. Walking together with him, Balins could be considered to be on the same side as him. However, Han Shuo faintly understood that the reason why Balins only came to find him today was most likely because Carel had obtained information from old astrologer Grace and understood that he and Lawrence were the future hope of the Lancelot Empire. That was why he was willing to let Balins learn martial arts with him. Seeing that Han Shuo's attitude was sincere, Carel smiled and nodded, saying, "You might have learned a bit about Balins' background from Lawrence. Back then, when Balins was an assassin, his hands were truly stained with blood. After so many years, Balins' bloodthirsty habits haven't diminished at all. I hope that you can guide him towards the right path and not let him become a crazy and irrational killing tool. Can you promise me this?" It seemed that Carel treated Balins pretty well. Not only did he respect Balins' decision and allowed Balins to leave him, he was also worried about Balins' future. However, after practicing the god-slaying devil path taught by Han Shuo's goal was to nurture Balins into a tool to eradicate dissidents. However, with the correct demonic arts, Balins wouldn't lose his rationality and become a madman who only knew how to kill. Han Shuo hesitated for a moment, knitting his brows as he pondered. Only then did he honestly answer Carel, "After Balins and I practice martial arts, we similarly can't change the bloodthirsty obsession in our hearts. However, my martial arts will guide him correctly and won't make him lose his rationality. Once he is able to break through his own shackles, he won't be able to increase his strength purely through killing. Therefore, I can only guarantee that he will always be clear-headed and won't become a tool who only knows how to kill like you said. However, the growth of his martial arts in the early stages indeed requires this method to stimulate his potential and release the killing intent that he has been suppressing all these years. Only then can he advance by leaps and bounds." After hearing Han Shuo's explanation, Carel stared at Han Shuo in astonishment. After a long while, he finally opened his mouth and said, "The martial arts you want to teach him, what kind of special cultivation method is it? Why do I feel that it sounds a little like some malicious magic from the evil church? You aren't really from the Calamity Church like what the outside world says, right? Shaking his head, Han Shuo smiled bitterly and explained, "It's completely different. My martial arts is a cultivation method that fuses fighting, aura, and magic." I don't know how to explain it either. In any case, my teacher said that this kind of martial arts doesn't belong to the profound continent. Corel was startled when he heard these words. He stared deeply at Han Shuo for a long time before saying with an excited expression, "A martial art that doesn't belong to the profound continent. What kind of miraculous person is your teacher?" Indeed, that's what he told me. My teacher possesses the formidable power to break free from the bindings of the plane of existence without the use of magical matrices. He has the remarkable ability to move mountains and drain the seas. Han Shuo described to Corel through his understanding of Chu Kanglin's strength. Ever since Han Shuo revealed his demonic arts, King Uhtred of the Lancelot Empire knew that Han Shuo possessed a mystical martial art. This sacred swordmaster Corel naturally knew about it long ago. Where did this martial art come from was always a question that they were curious about. Han Shuo naturally needed a set of lies to make up for this point. Therefore, he told Corel the same words he told Balins. When Han Shuo finished his description, Corel looked at Han Shuo in astonishment and said, "Your teacher might be a true godly character. I really don't know how you were so fortunate to meet such a character. No wonder Grace prophesied that whoever you help will become the new king of the Lancelot Empire. It seems that Grace's astrology is indeed miraculous. Whoever I help will become the new king of the Lancelot Empire." Han Shuo was similarly shocked and once again sighed ruefully. No wonder when Uhtred spoke to him, his tone even carried a trace of pleading. It seemed that the old astrologer had really helped him. However, since the old astrologer could predict the future, could he also see the past? He wondered if he could see through his true origins. Could he see that the original Brian had already died long ago? "Brian, is your teacher still on the profound continent? Can I go over and pay my respects to him?" While Han Shuo was letting his imagination run wild, Sacred Swordmaster Carol's emotions suddenly became a little chaotic. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Han Shuo and asked. Han Shuo abruptly recovered from his wild imagination. He smiled bitterly and shook his head, using the same words he used on Balins to brush off Corel. "After teacher imparted me the martial art, he left the profound continent by himself. I also don't know where he went. I'm sorry." "So it's like that." Corel was obviously a little disappointed as he muttered, "What a pity. I've been stuck in this realm for too long. If I had the chance to meet such a deity, perhaps I could ask him some questions and break through the shackles of my body." At Sacred Swordmaster Carol's level, perhaps the only thing he was concerned about was the continuous improvement of his strength. At his age, glory, splendor, wealth, fame, and power were all indifferent to him. Even the power of the country was unable to restrain him. Only the rumored strength of the demigod realm was his unchanging desire and pursuit. Last time in the underground world, I once encountered a rank 5 magical beast. Perhaps you've heard some information about him through the Dark Mantle. That ancient lizard king called Degasi left this place after reaching the demigod realm. I guess that he might have also left the profound continent for an even vaster plane. Han Shuo was silent for a moment before he suddenly opened his mouth again. Corel, who was deep in thought, was roused by Han Shuo's words. He then sighed and said, "Legend has it that when a character reaches the demigod realm, the profound continent's planar protector will take the initiative to look for them and help them break away from the profound continent's shackles." This information was told to us by Tanai's old monster Statholm the last time we went to the 7 Grand Duchies. Statholm is only a step away from the demigod realm. He faintly knows some of the deeper secrets of the profound continent. It seems that the demigod magical beast should have the qualifications to leave. Old monster Statholm. Han Shuo creased his brows, hearing this character once again. This time, from Carol's mouth, Han Shuo thoroughly understood Statholm's true strength. He was only a step away from the demigod realm. It seemed that he should be even more terrifying than Sacred Swordmaster Corel. Only experts with demigod strength had the qualifications to be summoned by the planar protector. It seemed that the profound continent was indeed full of unknown mysteries. Han Shuo was secretly alarmed before he replied. I reckon that Degassi has indeed left. Hee, such a long distance. I really don't know when I will have the qualifications to do so. You still have a long time to explore. In addition, you have a good teacher and should be much faster than us. Sigh, we are already too old. That step is always obstructing us. If we can't break it, we will have to bitterly wait forever. Corel sighed. His snow-white hair and soft skin proved the mercilessness of time. An expert like him could indeed live much longer than an ordinary person. However, that step was incomparably far away. Looking at Corel in front of him, Han Shuo knew for the first time that an aloof character like him in the Lancelot Empire also had worries. Perhaps this was his only worry. Han Shuo didn't know what to say and could only remain silent in front of Corel, waiting for Corel to walk out from his emotions. After a while, Corel seemed to have a trace of enlightenment. He looked at Han Shuo with interest and said with a smile, I've heard Balins talk about many of your miracles. However, I have never truly seen your martial arts. Perhaps your martial arts will give me some inspiration. If you don't mind, we can exchange pointers. With Carol's status, proposing to exchange pointers with Han Shuo indeed caused Han Shuo to be somewhat shocked. However, Han Shuo understood that Corel was interested in the demonic arts that he practiced and not Han Shuo's personal strength. After staring blankly for a moment, Han Shuo smiled and said modestly, It can't be said to be exchanging pointers. I can't ask for more if you're willing to give me pointers. That brat is being presumptuous. Corel seemed to admire Han Shuo's straightforwardness. He smiled and nodded, saying, It doesn't matter. Just use your martial arts to attack me. I'm really curious about your martial arts. I want to see how it's different from the fighting aura that I practice. When he said this, Han Shuo was also somewhat excited in his heart. Han Shuo, who was in the separate demon realm, had never known his true strength. Han Shuo felt sufficient confidence when facing experts of the great Swordmaster realm. However, he had never met an expert like a sacred Swordmaster. Although the elven matriarch Adele that he previously met in the underground world was extremely powerful, when Han Shuo truly stood in front of Corel, he understood that Adele should still be inferior to Corel. In addition, Han Shuo did not truly exchange blows with Adele last time. He purely used the evil nature of demonic arts to suck Adele to death by harvesting Yin to replenish Yang. He did not exchange blows with Adele with real swords and spears. Perhaps through this exchange with sacred Swordmaster Corel, Han Shuo would be able to truly understand the current position of the separate demon realm. It would also be good for him to have an accurate judgment the next time he meets a powerful enemy. Therefore, when Han Shuo heard that Corel wanted to exchange pointers with him, he was indeed somewhat excited. The martial arts that I practice is called demonic arts. It has some similarities to fighting aura, but its nature is somewhat different. Perhaps you will be able to sense it in a while. Han Shuo took a few steps back. With a thought, the demon's lair edge suddenly appeared in Han Shuo's palm. Since Balins thinks so highly of you, it means that your martial arts must have some peculiarities. Brian, you don't need to hold back. Just attack me as much as you want. Corel stood up from the boulder and took out a sparkling long sword from his space ring. The long sword was 3 fingers wide and 3 meters long. The sword hilt was engraved with a cross pattern. Chapter 397. Han Shuo was fully aware that someone who had cultivated fighting aura to Carol's level would definitely have terrifying strength. Furthermore, Han Shuo was preparing to use Corel to test his true strength and did not hold back. Demonic Yuan poured into the demon's lair edge, catalyzing the demon's lair edge's innate malicious spirit energy, causing the demon's lair edge to suddenly erupt with a soaring killing intent. With the demon's lair edge in Han Shuo's hand as the center, the killing intent was like ripples that spread outwards in circles. The circles of killing intent seemed to be substantial as they rippled in the air, causing friction with the air to emit a peculiar chi-chi sound. Waves of evil and ruthless aura could no longer be contained as it overflowed from Han Shuo's body. Sacred Swordmaster Carol's expression changed as his snow-white brows knitted together. A pair of deep starry eyes emitted a resplendent radiance. For Corel to be able to cultivate to the level of sacred swordmaster, his talent was naturally extraordinary. He had fought all over for many years and had seen countless experts. His wealth of battle experience was enough to show disdain for the entire Lancelot Empire. Corel could clearly feel the shocking killing intent that erupted from the Demon's Lair edge in Han Shua's hand. The circles of killing intent that spread in all directions carried a dense evil and ruthless aura, as though they contained a violent, explosive force, causing Corel to be truly shocked. In the profound continent, most experts would gradually realize the importance of imposing aura before the battle. However, there had never been anyone who was able to turn their aura into strength to face the enemy. This was exactly the same as how Balins used killing intent to destroy a person's willpower. The difference was that Han Shua's killing intent was more traceable. Corel understood that this kind of aura definitely existed, unlike Balin's killing intent that could only intimidate one's soul. Just as sacred swordmaster Corel was staring at Han Shua with sparkling eyes, Han Shua, who had poured demonic yuan into the Demon's Lair edge, shot a bloody radiance of 10,000 cuts towards sacred swordmaster Corel. The Demon's Lair edge suddenly rotated at high speed, a bloody radiance blossoming like a flower petal. Every time it rotated, a ray of blood-red light would take shape like a blade. Halfway through the battle of 10,000 blood-red lights, it had already formed a hedgehog-like blood-red ball of blades. Carrying a dense, baleful aura and a soul-stirring screech, it rapidly shot towards sacred swordmaster Corel. What a mystical martial skill! Corel suddenly praised in a loud voice. The long sword in his hand was suddenly raised, and the golden-colored aura was activated. The sword pierced towards the blood-colored ball of blades that was flying at high speed. The golden fighting aura could only be released by sacred swordmasters and sacred knights. This was a sign that the fighting aura had been condensed to the pinnacle. Han Shua could clearly sense the destructive power contained within. Although the golden fighting aura was different in nature from the magical yuan, it still contained a frightening explosive power. Corel raised his long sword. The brilliant golden radiance was incomparably dazzling. He raised his hand and drew a circular arc. Suddenly, cross-shaped sword rays shot out from the tip of his long sword. After the cross-shaped sword rays shot out from the tip of his sword, from small to large, they continuously collided with Han Shua's blood-colored sphere of blades. Carol's title as the Cross-Sacred Swordmaster was indeed well-deserved. Each and every one of his sword lights formed a cross and shot onto the ball of blades that Han Shua's bloody light had formed, rapidly grinding away the demonic yuan contained within the Demon's Lair edge. Before this tyrannical bloody radiance of 10,000 cuts could reach Corel, it was neutralized by the cross-shaped sword lights. Carol's expression was relaxed from beginning to end. It was obvious that he had yet to use his full strength. When the blossoming 10,000 lights were annihilated one by one and finally returned to the original form of the Demon's Lair edge, Han Shua's mind stirred. He saw the Demon's Lair edge that was originally shooting straight towards Corel suddenly freeze in the air. Soon after, the Demon's Lair edge fiercely moved in a mysterious curve, chopping towards Corel from above. "Oh, interesting," Corel lightly exclaimed. He raised his head to look at the Demon's Lair edge chopping down. He raised his hand and brandished his sword, pushing aside the Demon's Lair edge that Han Shua was chopping towards him. Han Shua's eyes were fixed on Corel. At this moment, he suddenly closed his eyes and fully controlled the Demon's Lair edge with his mind, using the demonic arts to continuously slash at Corel from all directions. In the beginning, the Demon's Lair edge's speed wasn't very fast. However, Han Shua gradually increased its speed. The Demon's Lair edge's initial slashes gradually turned into lightning-like phantoms. After the tens of thousands of malicious spirits within the Demon's Lair edge were activated, waves after waves of endless resentment spread out. At the beginning, Sacred Swordmaster Corel was still able to deal with it easily. However, his expression became solemn as his entire body was wrapped in a brilliant golden light. With Corel as the center, one cross-shaped sword light after another shot out explosively. On one hand, he needed to use his longsword to defend against the Demon's Lair edge's rapid attacks. On the other hand, he also needed to use his mind to defend against the malicious spirits spreading out from the demon's lair edge. One had to admit that Sacred Swordmaster Corel was indeed not an ordinary person. Corel, who could proudly stand at the peak of the Lancelot Empire, did not show the slightest sign of being defeated when facing Han Shua's all-out attacks. He still appeared calm and unruffled. Han Shua had depleted half of his demonic yuan. Seeing that Corel still did not show any signs of fatigue, he once again infused the mystical glacial spellfire into the demon's lair edge. Blossoms of purplish-red spellfire were attached to the demon's lair edge with every slash of the demon's lair edge. The energy of extreme cold and extreme heat continuously fluctuated, causing many troubles for Corel. In the end, the 12 mystical demons materialized, turning into sinister and terrifying demonic faces as they attempted to enter Carol's body from every opening. Corel let out a soft cry of surprise before suddenly shouting, "It is indeed miraculous." This martial technique is indeed different from any of the cultivation methods on the profound continent. Facing so many attacks, Corel still had the leisure to shout loudly. Shortly after, the long sword in his hand suddenly shot out a resplendent golden light. An enormous cross-shaped sword light suddenly appeared, carrying an unstoppable force as it spread out in all directions. For a moment, a fierce explosion actually occurred with Corel as the center. The boulder he was on was the first to be unable to withstand the explosion and exploded with a loud bang. Amidst the flying rocks, the ground actually started to terrifyingly collapse. It was as though an enormous force had bombarded the ground, shattering everything in the surroundings. Han Shua was shocked and immediately recalled all 12 mystical demons. With a long roar, he soared into the sky and instantly landed beside Corel. The demon's lair edge that had been attacking Corel for a long time flew back and landed in Han Shua's palm. The remaining demonic yuan frantically poured into the demon's lair edge. A stream of killing intent and resentment from the malicious spirits within the demon's lair edge formed a 7-meter-long blood-colored waterfall. Coordinating with the mountain-like strength of the demon's lair edge, it ferociously chopped towards Carol's enormous cross-shaped sword light with astonishing explosive force. A fierce explosion sounded from the point of contact. The boundary that enveloped the entire space collapsed with a loud bang. The vast expanse of white space suddenly returned to its original appearance, revealing the original shape of the spacious underground stone room. At the same time that the boundary was destroyed, a violent wave spread out, causing the earth to tremble along with the overflow of the wave. The astonishing explosive force suddenly poured into the demon's lair edge and rushed into Han Shua's body along the sword hilt. Han Shua's body that had been chopped down couldn't help but fly up at high speed. Finally, his body crashed into the rock wall above with a loud bang, breaking a 3-meter deep hole. What's going on? What's going on? Is there an earthquake? Oh, the bed is still moving. In the rose garden above Han Shua and Han Shua, the nobles that were having fun with the beauties suddenly felt the tremors coming from the bottom of their feet. Each and every one of them was shocked and started to discuss one after another. Some of the guards in charge of the rose garden were also shocked. They didn't know what was going on and were like headless flies trying to find the cause of the tremors underground. Right at this moment, the sinister-looking Balins suddenly appeared in the midst of the guards in the rose garden and coldly berated, "What are you panicking for? It's just a small earthquake. This is the center of Asen City. Apart from some natural phenomena, what else could there be?" In the eyes of the guards in the rose garden, Balins was a true fiend. When Balin's words fell, the guards calmed down one after another and followed Balin's instructions to comfort the frightened nobles. The majority of the nobles calmed down after hearing the guards' descriptions. However, there were still some timid guards who immediately abandoned the beauties on the bed and hurriedly fled the rose garden. They were afraid that there would be 1 or 2 more tremors under the rose garden, and their precious lives would be left here. Balins calmed the panicked emotions of the guards, but he himself was apprehensive as he didn't understand what was going on underground. He had just brought Han Shua underground. Whether it was his old master Corel or this newly acknowledged senior brother, Balins didn't wish for anything to happen to the two of them. However, the tremors underground were so violent that it was clearly caused by the two of them fighting. Balins understood that Sacred Swordmaster Carol's strength was terrifying and could also see that Han Shuo was an extremely daring and fearless person. He was really afraid that the two of them would have a huge fight. After waiting for the people above to calm down with great difficulty, Balins hastily headed to the secret underground area. The flustered Balins had just entered the underground area and had yet to arrive at the area where Carell was when he heard Carol's hearty laughter. When Balins heard Carol's laughter, his heart suddenly relaxed before he was somewhat apprehensive. The spacious stone room where Carell was located was surrounded by a complex enchantment set up by a space archmage. Not only was it able to cut off sound and scene, once one fell into it, one would have a feeling of entering another world. Now, Balins had yet to approach that area when he heard Carol's hearty laughter, which explained a shocking fact. The enchantment was destroyed. When Balins confirmed this fact, he hastily entered that spacious stone room. The scene that entered his eyes was beyond his expectations. He saw Sacred Swordmaster Carell sitting cross-legged on the boulder that had been shattered into small stones. Carell was standing in an area that seemed to be the epicenter of an earthquake, smiling as he looked at a cave in the rock wall above. Within the cave, Han Shuo shook his shoulders and twisted his body that was deeply sunken in the cave. The hard rock shattered and fell. Han Shuo similarly smiled as he leaped from above and landed on the ground. Balins, it seems that your choice was really good. The martial skill on this brat's body is shocking. I have traveled the continent for many years and have never seen or heard of such a martial skill. He has only cultivated for a few years and already possesses such terrifying strength. Who knows how powerful he will be in the future? No wonder that old astrologer Grace had that kind of prophecy. Sacred Swordmaster Carell smiled as he looked at Balins, who had walked in, and praised him. Facing Sacred Swordmaster Carell, Balins appeared to be very respectful as he opened his mouth and said, "I have seen Senior Brother's martial skill before. It is naturally very mystical. What I have bitterly studied for many years but was unable to comprehend. He has long been able to skillfully use it. Moreover, it has far exceeded my imagination." Han Shuo leaped down, his bones crackling. When Han Shuo moved his muscles and bones, traces of blood-colored black radiance flowed on the surface of Han Shuo's skin like electric arcs. Shaking his neck, Han Shuo smiled and said, "Mr. Carroll's reputation is indeed well-deserved. It seems that you have yet to use your full strength. Hee, I have truly benefited greatly from this battle." Carell was only a sword, and with the addition of his golden fighting aura, he was able to stand firm under Han Shuo's storm-like attacks. The explosive power of his final strike possessed an unparalleled ferocity that was completely inconsistent with his old appearance. This truly shocked Han Shuo. The older the ginger, the spicier. Han Shuo understood that he shouldn't be able to defeat Carell just by relying on the demonic arts of the separate demon realm. However, if he summoned necromancy magic, Little Skull, and the other 4 elite zombies, he was confident that he could defeat Carell. After experiencing the last trip to the other world, Han Shuo knew that Little Skull's strength was not ordinary. "I have yet to use my full strength. Didn't you also not use necromancy magic?" Hee. The undead creatures summoned by a grand magus necromancer are very troublesome. You're not bad, really not bad. Phoebe still has a good eye. Carell smiled as he spoke. He paused for a moment before continuing. "After sparring with you just now, I understand that your martial technique is very peculiar. It's like a combination of fighting aura and magic. It seems that it is indeed suitable for Balins to train in." Fighting aura only possessed pure destructive power. However, Han Shuo's demonic yuan could temper the body, guarantee the treatment of some illnesses, and even influence the opponent's soul. When manipulated, one would possess all kinds of remarkable abilities. Fighting aura was only formed slowly through pure physical training. However, demonic yuan could form the consciousness and demonic infant. Using some killing aura, the peculiar aura of heaven and earth, and even some elixirs and rare items could increase one's demonic yuan. From certain aspects, demonic yuan was indeed much more mystical. "Balins, you and Brian go out. I need to think about it properly. I have gained a lot from this battle. Corell smiled as he instructed Balins while Han Shuo was deep in thought. Chapter 398. Walking out of the northern rose garden, Balins followed closely behind Han Shuo when they reached the entrance. While Han Shuo was staring at Balins in astonishment, he respectfully said, "Senior, from today onwards, I will officially leave the rose garden and follow you." Han Shuo didn't expect Balins to be so straightforward. He thought for a moment before saying with a smile, "How about this? You will still be responsible for protecting Lawrence during this period of time. When he no longer needs your protection, you will return to my side. I will make some preparations and arrange an induction ceremony for you after a period of time. Once the ceremony is complete, I will immediately impart you martial techniques." "All right then. Since it's like this, I will continue to protect Prince Lawrence." Han Shua's orders were now higher than Carol's. Balins was used to listening to others' orders and nodded in agreement. Under Han Shua's orders, Balins gradually disappeared into the darkness. Han Shuo understood that he had gone to secretly protect Lawrence again and headed back to his own residence alone. Currently, Austin City was in a sensitive period. Late at night, the streets were heavily guarded. The city guards shuttled through the streets and alleys in an endless stream. While the various nobles were having fun at night, they didn't forget to discuss official matters. In the northern rose garden, Han Shuo had previously heard many nobles discussing the princes through the mystical demons. They were debating about which prince they should attach themselves to. It was also just now that Han Shuo suddenly understood that His Majesty King Uhtred had already started his thunderous actions. All of a sudden, the military ministers who were close to Lawrence were more or less promoted due to various reasons. Lawrence, who was originally the least favored by others, was suddenly the subject of intense attention. His Majesty King Uhtred's obvious favoritism caused the nobles and princes to feel uneasy. They didn't understand what had gotten into Uhtred's head. Sacred Swordmaster Corell, who had always remained neutral and had never openly supported Lawrence, had already declared that anyone who dared to privately deal with Lawrence would have to bear his wrath after leaving the imperial palace. He even vaguely pointed out how despicable Grand Duke Ashburn was. Even the Dark Mantle organization that was the Empire's Hand of Darkness had suddenly become close to Lawrence. Ames, who was feared by all nobles, was even seen going to Lawrence's mansion at night. This seemed to prove that the Dark Mantle and Lawrence had also faintly teamed up. Lawrence, who had been bullied and humiliated by the princes for a long time, had suddenly become the topic of discussion among the nobles late at night. Some of the great personages of the Lancelot Empire, who had never taken Lawrence seriously as an illegitimate child, had suddenly changed their views on him today. King Uhtred has ruled the Lancelot Empire for many years. It seems that before Uhtred dies, the entire Lancelot Empire is still under his control. The final successor of the princes will still be decided by him alone. Han Shuo pondered inwardly as he unhurriedly walked towards his mansion. The road was quiet late at night. Han Shuo swiftly passed by, not leaving a trace on the street. There were a few mystical demons spying on him from the surroundings. Han Shuo easily avoided the city guards and quickly returned to his mansion. After Han Shuo returned, he discovered that other than a few guards and the old steward, the servants in the mansion had all fallen asleep. When Kala saw Han Shuo appear, he hastily walked over and greeted Han Shuo. Shortly after, he said in a low voice, "Lord Marquis, there's someone in the house who wishes to see you." Han Shuo stared blankly, finding it strange that someone would actually come so late at night. He couldn't help but feel somewhat astonished. A mystical demon immediately flew towards the location Kalas had mentioned. After that, a handsome and elegant figure suddenly entered his sight. "It's actually him." Han Shuo was shocked. Afterwards, he nodded towards Kalas and instructed, "All right, it's getting late. You should rest early. I can go over by myself." Kalas didn't say anything else. He bowed towards Han Shuo and immediately withdrew. After walking all the way to the guest room, Han Shuo entered and the door closed automatically. Looking at the extraordinarily handsome Grand Magus Necromancer in front of him, Han Shuo creased his brows and asked, Why are you here? Wolf smiled and leisurely looked at Han Shuo, saying, I've come to thank you. Due to the skeletal staff, you've allowed me to recover my youth. Hee, I'm very grateful for this. Recently, there have been some unfavorable news circulating outside. I don't want your arrival to cause me to be unable to wash away other people's misunderstandings. If there's nothing important, it's best that you don't come and cause trouble for me in the future. Your identity is really too sensitive. I can't afford to provoke you. Han Shuo didn't have any enmity towards Wolf, but he also didn't have any favorable impression of him. Currently, within Asen City, Kas and his group were constantly trying to ruin his reputation. Although Han Shuo had Uhtred's help, if Kas really managed to obtain concrete evidence, it would really be very difficult for Han Shuo to deal with it. Don't worry. It's precisely because I don't want to cause you trouble that I chose to appear so late at night. In addition, most people don't know my identity. Even some of the enemies of the Church of Light in the past wouldn't be able to recognize the current me. Therefore, you don't have to worry. I won't bring you any trouble. Wolf explained. After he said that, Han Shuo carefully looked at Wolf's appearance. He couldn't help but admit that Wolf's words did make some sense. The current elegant and handsome Wolf, brimming with the aura of nobility, couldn't be connected to the previous Wolf who was neither human nor ghost. If it wasn't because of the skeletal staff in Han Shuo's hands, Han Shuo wouldn't believe that the elegant youth in front of him was the several hundred-year-old Wolf, even if he was beaten to death. Why are you looking for me? Han Shuo slightly relaxed, but he still frowned and looked at Wolf unhappily. We should be friends. Moreover, we really are friends. From the beginning to the end, our Calamity Church has always treated you as a friend. Moreover, I'm a necromancer. You shouldn't be so cold to me. Wolf spread out his hands and said somewhat sorrowfully. Han Shuo was stunned. After thinking for a while, it was indeed as he said. The Calamity Church, the evil power feared by everyone in the profound continent, had been throwing him an olive branch ever since he revealed that he could refine necromancers that weren't afraid of light magic. They spared no effort to protect him. When Han Shuo's skeletal staff was discovered by Wolf, the Calamity Church's friendly attitude towards Han Shuo made Han Shuo somewhat vexed. Looking at the sincere Wolf in front of him, Han Shuo really didn't know how to treat him. Han Shuo's expression softened and was no longer as cold. A faint smile appeared on his face as he walked over to pull a chair and sat down. He asked, then, Mr. Wolf, can you tell me why you're looking for me? Also, how does the Calamity Church want to treat me? Wolf saw that Han Shuo's expression was no longer as cold and cheerfully smiled. That's right. We'll be friends. Very good friends. There aren't many necromancers in this world, and necromancers at the Grand Magus Necromancer realm are even rarer. You and I, as Grand Magus Necromancers, should have a lot of common interests. I really didn't expect that you would actually become a Grand Magus Necromancer so quickly. It seems like the Holy Land must have given you many things. Holy Land? What Holy Land? Han Shuo stared blankly and asked in puzzlement. Wolf seemed to know that Han Shuo would ask him this and straightened his body upon hearing the question. He appeared to be slightly excited as he said, The Holy Land is what our Calamity Church calls that place. Most people in the profound continent call that place the Cemetery of Death. Since the skeletal staff is in your hands, I think you can't deny the fact that you've been to the Holy Land. In addition, you've only been cultivating necromancy magic for less than 5 years, yet you've already become a Grand Magus Necromancer, just like I've cultivated for hundreds of years. This is enough to explain the problem. There are also undead creatures that aren't afraid of light magic and other miracles that prove the fact that you've been to the Holy Land. When these words were spoken, Han Shuo's heart was in turmoil. He understood that he hadn't been cautious enough, or that his understanding of the Calamity Church and some of the secrets of necromancers was too little. This was why Wolf was able to see the problem from the skeletal staff. Wolf's words were certain, and it was obvious that he had guessed the truth. For a moment, Han Shuo's expression was unsettled, and his eyes faintly revealed an ominous glint. He was contemplating whether or not he should kill everyone who knew about this. However, after thinking about it again, it was already too late. Wolf had most likely already reported this information to the Calamity Church. Wolf, who had lived for who knew how many years, was inwardly shocked by Han Shua's fierce gaze. Wolf, who had high attainments in necromancy magic, could clearly sense Han Shua's concealed killing intent. When Han Shua stared at him, Wolf actually felt his heart palpitate. This caused Wolf to be somewhat dumbfounded and puzzled. Only when he was reprimanded by someone of the level of the Calamity Church's Pope of Darkness would he, Wolf, feel his heart palpitate. He didn't want to be stared at by this young man who was countless times younger than him. Wolf actually felt his heart palpitate. He was very clear on what this feeling meant to Wolf. He understood that only when an expert who could threaten his life revealed dissatisfaction with him and had thoughts of killing him would he instinctively feel his heart palpitate. Could it be that this young man in front of him, who had just become a grand magus necromancer, had the strength to kill him? A misconception. It must be a misconception. Wolf explained himself and awkwardly said to Han Shua, "Don't be hostile towards me. Really, our Calamity Church will absolutely not become enemies with you. Since the skeletal staff has recognized you as its master, you are our Calamity Church's benefactor. Our Calamity Church will need to rely on you for many things. Moreover, you must be alive. So you're saying that if I died and you could obtain even greater benefits, you would have already made your move?" Han Shua narrowed his eyes and slowly said as he sized up Wolf. Wolf's expression became even more awkward. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded and said, "If we could kill you and not cause any harm to our Calamity Church, and could even benefit our Calamity Church, I believe that the higher-ups would have already issued the order to kill you, and not to protect and cooperate with you with all their might." Wolf could still be considered frank. It wasn't that Han Shua hadn't seen the Calamity Church's methods of doing things. The first time he saw Belinda, who was only an alchemist, tried to kill all the living people in an inn without any scruples. She didn't care about the lives of strangers at all and acted as if everything was just as it should be. Snorting coldly, Han Shua understood that Wolf already knew about the matter of the Cemetery of Death. However, Han Shua naturally wouldn't reveal any details and once again replied with a straight face, "It's none of your business to interfere in my affairs. You'd better be honest and tell me your intentions for coming here." Seeing that Han Shua was once again displeased, Wolf hastily explained, "We can temporarily not discuss matters regarding the Holy Land. I've only come this time to tell you some secrets regarding the skeletal staff and the Holy Land. These should be the information you're most eager to know." Didn't you say last time that if I didn't join the Calamity Church, you wouldn't tell me the secret of the skeletal staff? What? You've come all the way here to tell me this information again. I've clearly said last time that I won't join the Calamity Church. You'd better not make a rash decision," Han Shua said to Wolf indifferently. For some unknown reason, Grand Magus Necromancer Wolf, who was supposed to be aloof and above ordinary people, was incomparably humble when he spoke to Han Shua. He even seemed to be purposefully trying to curry favor with Han Shua. "From the moment you picked up the skeletal staff, you've already become a member of our Calamity Church." Wolf thought to himself before explaining with a smile, "No matter. The higher-ups have given the order, so I'll naturally tell you some information regarding the skeletal staff and the Holy Land. However, what I've told you is only what I know. There are still some things I don't know that I can't do anything about. Since that's the case, it'd be a waste not to listen. Just say it," Han Shua said faintly. He didn't seem to be as impatient as before. However, only he knew whether or not he was extremely curious in his heart. Let's talk about the Holy Land first. According to the legends of the Calamity Church, there's a magical transportation array in the Holy Land. That magical transportation array possesses the mysteries of connecting to other planes, especially the Netherworld. Necromancers can rely on their original bodies to descend into the Netherworld and explore even more unknown areas of the Netherworld, allowing them to make even greater progress in necromancy magic. In addition, there's also a legend within the Calamity Church. I'm not sure if the legend is true or not, but I've heard the Pope say that the Holy Land isn't a building from the Profound Continent. It was originally something that descended into the Profound Continent from another plane. I'm guessing that that plane might be the Netherworld." Wolf took a deep breath and explained to Han Shua, Chapter 399. After hearing Wolf's words, Han Shua's heart was in turmoil. The Calamity Church should know something about the Cemetery of Death. What he said might be true. The first level of the Cemetery of Death was an ancient magical transportation matrix. It was precisely through this ancient magical transportation matrix that Han Shua could travel to various places without the slightest restriction of the region. Now that he heard Wolf say that the magical transportation matrix in the center could actually connect to another plane, Han Shua was indescribably shocked. The ordinary transportation arrays on the continent usually had a distance limit. For example, the transportation arrays between the major cities of the Lancelot Empire could only teleport a few thousand miles. No one had ever heard of a transportation array that could teleport tens of thousands of miles. The further the distance, the higher the requirements for the transportation array. Apart from the comprehension of the person who set up the transportation array, one also needed to spend a lot of effort in terms of materials and geography. An ordinary space sacred magus could only set up a transportation array that could teleport 4,000 to 5,000 miles. However, according to Wolf, the large-scale transportation array in the center of the Cemetery of Death could teleport to another plane. To Han Shua, this was simply inconceivable. When Wolf said that the Cemetery of Death was a building from another plane, it made Han Shua feel as if his brain was lacking oxygen. Seeing Han Shua looking at him in shock, Wolf continued, "Of course, there's another saying about the Holy Land. It's said that it can move. In addition, it has the same self-sufficient offensive and defensive power as a magic tower. These are all legends passed down within the church, but I think it should be credible. As for the skeletal staff in your hand, it can be seen as the key to opening the Holy Land. The tricolored skulls of the skeletal staff contain 3 kinds of strange powers. One is to multiply the power of a necromancer's necromancy spells. I think you should be very clear about this. The other strange power, which you've tried on me, is to allow necromancers to regain their youth. Not only for necromancers who possess the skeletal staff, it can also be used on other people. I'm not sure if you've tried the last effect of the skeletal staff before. Legend has it that it allows one's soul to travel to and from the netherworld unimpeded. One can enter the netherworld with a single thought and return to the profound continent with a single thought. This effect is the most mysterious and unfathomable. It allows necromancers to have a clearer understanding of the netherworld, allowing them to walk further in the field of necromancy magic. Each of the 3 skulls of the skeletal staff contains a type of power. However, these 3 types of power are just legends passed down by the Calamity Church for a long time. As for whether there are more secrets hidden within the skeletal staff, it's not something I can understand. What I've told you is only what I know. Han Shua had seen the 3 peculiar powers of the tricolored skeletal staff, so he firmly believed Wolf's words. Han Shua had tried all of the 3 mysterious effects of the skeletal staff, multiplying one's magic power, regaining one's youth, and freely traveling to and from the netherworld. However, apart from the first effect of multiplying the power of necromancy magic, Han Shua had never comprehended the 2 mysterious powers of regaining one's youth and traveling to and from the netherworld. Han Shua was even more clueless about the last mysterious power, which allowed one's soul to travel to and from the netherworld. The 2 times he had entered the netherworld, he had gone there inexplicably, and he had also returned inexplicably. It wasn't like what Wolf had said, where he could travel to and from the netherworld with a single thought. It seemed that it wasn't because of the skeletal staff, but because Han Shua hadn't truly grasped the knack of using the skeletal staff. According to Wolf, once Han Shua truly grasped the power of the skeletal staff, he would indeed be able to travel to and from the netherworld with a single thought and reunite with the souls of Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie in the netherworld. He would then be able to easily explore the unknown secrets of the netherworld and ascertain whether the Cemetery of Death was a peculiar structure in the netherworld as Wolf had said. I came here according to the orders of the higher-ups to tell you about the skeletal staff and some of the secrets of the Holy Land. I think that once you know these things, you should have a direction to explore. The Calamity Church will be your solid backing. You, who wields the skeletal staff, are an important part of our Calamity Church. You can deny this, but we have long since acknowledged it internally, Wolf explained with a smile as he looked at the contemplating Han Shuo. What you guys acknowledge should be the skeletal staff and the cemetery of death, right? Han Shuo's contemplation was interrupted by Wolf. He immediately glanced at Wolf and said meaningfully, "It's all the same. The skeletal staff is extremely useful to our Calamity Church. When you truly grasp all of the uses of the skeletal staff, the higher-ups will personally come to find you." Wolf didn't directly answer Han Shuo's question and continued to speak. "The skeletal staff is very useful to you guys? Is it mainly because of the effects of the last two mysterious powers?" Han Shuo hesitated for a moment before asking. Wolf stared blankly and thought for a moment before nodding and answering, "You can say that. I'm not too clear about the specifics, but I do know that there are some powerful existences in the Calamity Church. Due to their old age, their physical bodies have already reached an extremely fragile state. Some of their physical bodies have fatal flaws. If the skeletal staff bestows them with the power of rejuvenation, these incomparably powerful people will make the Church of Light tremble. And you are the one who can bestow them with new physical strength, allowing them to live longer. Therefore, your importance to the Calamity Church is self-evident. Moreover, only you can open the Holy Land. In the future, some of the secrets of the Holy Land will similarly need to be opened by your hands." These words shouldn't be instructions from the higher-ups to Wolf, but rather Wolf's initiative to express his goodwill to Han Shuo. Therefore, Wolf paused for a moment before adding, "Brian, I'm telling you this personally. I hope that you can leave a good impression on me. This way, I will be grateful." Han Shuo was still shocked by Wolf's words and nodded slightly upon hearing this. However, he didn't guarantee anything. "All right, it's getting late. I'll be taking my leave." After Wolf said this, he respectfully handed a card to Han Shuo and said, "There's a way to contact me here. If you need my or our strength, you can find me at any time. We will spare no effort in helping you." Han Shuo casually put the card away and nodded indifferently once again. His mind was filled with the secrets of the Cemetery of Death and the skeletal staff. These things coming from Wolf's mouth gave Han Shuo a great shock, making him want to quickly sort out his thoughts. All along, Han Shuo knew that the Cemetery of Death hid many secrets. However, Han Shuo had stayed in the Cemetery of Death for a long time, yet he still hadn't figured out its true secrets. However, Wolf's words had pointed out a direction for Han Shuo to explore, allowing Han Shuo to understand which aspects of the Cemetery of Death were the most attractive. "Perhaps I should go to a deeper layer of the Cemetery of Death to explore. Perhaps the lower layer of the Cemetery of Death has the answer I need." Han Shuo silently pondered for a moment before making this decision. While Han Shuo was silently pondering, Grand Magus Necromancer Wolf had already left without a sound. Han Shuo raised his head to look outside and discovered that the full moon in the sky was gradually disappearing. Unknowingly, a late night had already passed. Han Shuo thought for a moment. His curiosity towards the secrets of the Cemetery of Death and the skeletal staff grew stronger and stronger. With the magical transportation matrix that led directly to the Cemetery of Death, it was incomparably convenient to travel between the two places. Since there didn't seem to be anything important tomorrow, Han Shuo directly entered the secret room and activated the transportation matrix. As soon as he arrived at the Cemetery of Death, before Han Shuo could uncover the secrets of the Cemetery of Death, the connection between him and Dark Dragon Gilbert was immediately established. Lancelot Empire's Asen City and the Valley of Sunshine were too far apart. Although Han Shuo and Dark Dragon had the power of the contract, he could only sense whether Dark Dragon Gilbert was dead or alive. He couldn't sense his consciousness or location. However, the Dark Forest was very close to the Valley of Sunshine. As Han Shuo and Gilbert's strength increased by a large margin, the connection between the two became increasingly clear. As soon as Han Shuo and Dark Dragon Gilbert established a mental connection, he immediately sensed Dark Dragon Gilbert's urgent desire to see him. Han Shuo, who had originally planned to immediately explore the secrets of the Cemetery of Death, deeply understood Gilbert's urgency. He had no choice but to temporarily abandon his plans to immediately explore the Cemetery of Death. He immediately walked out of the Cemetery of Death and rushed in the direction of the Valley of Sunshine. Along the way, Han Shuo used the art of the demonic ninth heavens and arrived at the cliff where the Soul Destroyer mercenary band was hiding in the Valley of Sunshine. Dark Dragon Gilbert had long sensed Han Shuo's presence and was waiting far below. Beside Dark Dragon Gilbert stood a coquettish woman. This woman had a voluptuous figure and a gorgeous appearance. Her long brown hair was braided into 9 small braids that draped over her shoulders. She appeared coquettish and mature, giving off a unique, alluring feeling. After Han Shuo came down, this woman was obviously a bit fearful and subconsciously leaned against Dark Dragon Gilbert. Gilbert casually embraced this coquettish woman and explained to Han Shuo, "This is Lania. I conquered her in the dark forest. You've seen her before." Hydra. Han Shuo stared blankly and immediately understood. He couldn't help but take another look. Lania respectfully bowed towards Han Shuo and sweetly said, "Master." Han Shuo didn't ask any more questions about Hydra Lania and only nodded to her. Then, he furrowed his brows and asked Gilbert, "Why are you in such a hurry to have me come? What happened?" "Trunks has disappeared. There's no news of him in the entire Valley of Sunshine," Gilbert said worriedly. Chapter 400. What's going on? Han Shuo was a bit in disbelief. Trunks was now a great swordmaster, and the only one who could beat him in a one-on-one battle in the entire Valley of Sunshine was perhaps the thrice berserker Loritan. However, even Loritan shouldn't have the ability to kill Trunks alone. Trunks was a cautious person and was incomparably familiar with the terrain around the Valley of Sunshine. There shouldn't be any problems. But now that he had actually disappeared, this really surprised Han Shuo. After returning from Janet's place, there was no trace of him for 4 days in a row. When there's no mission, he would never be so late. Even if he didn't return, he should have sent a message. But this time, there was no news at all. We sent people to find Janet and learned from her that Trunks had indeed left from her place. He also brought a dozen brothers with him, and they also disappeared without a trace. Dark Dragon Gilbert explained to Han Shuo with a somewhat distressed expression. Frowning, Han Shuo pondered for a while and asked, "Has Trunks had any disputes with any forces recently?" 10 days ago, under Trunks' leadership, we ambushed Butcher's bandits with Janet. Even Butcher Gustav was killed by Trunks and Janet. His bandits can be said to be done for in the Valley of Sunshine. Apart from that, we didn't have any relations with any other forces. The one speaking was Grant. As an old friend of Trunks, he was really very worried about Trunks' safety. The Valley of Sunshine was located in the center of 3 countries. For many years, the Valley of Sunshine had become a special region. From there, the richest resources of the 3 countries could be gathered. Han Shuo had funded Trunks to establish the Soul Destroyer mercenary band with the intention of taking the Valley of Sunshine for himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent a rebirth pill to help Trunks be reborn. Now that the Soul Destroyer mercenary band had gradually grown to become one of the major forces in the Valley of Sunshine, Trunks' sudden accident had already affected the development of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. This was definitely not an outcome that Han Shuo was willing to see. Listening to Gilbert and Grant narrate the ins and outs of the matter, Han Shuo remained silent. "Honored Master, do you think something has happened to Trunks?" Seeing Han Shuo's silence, Gilbert couldn't help but ask. "Nonsense," Han Shuo snapped. After thinking for a while, he opened his mouth. "We don't know how Trunks is for the time being. Everyone, don't act rashly. Don't take any missions for now. Wait until Trunks' matter is settled." "Master, we've been searching for Trunks for a few days, but haven't received any news of him. Should we continue searching?" Gilbert scratched his head and asked in distress. "Gather the men. I think we've run into big trouble this time." Currently, the forces in the Valley of Sunshine that dare to make a move against the Soul Destroyer mercenary band can be counted on one hand. Since something has happened to Trunks, I think the Soul Destroyer mercenary band will be next. Han Shuo took a deep breath and instructed Grant and Dark Dragon. "Right, why don't I see Odysseus and the others?" Han Shuo suddenly discovered that Odysseus' unique team wasn't here and couldn't help but ask in astonishment. "They have a mission on hand and haven't returned to the Valley of Sunshine yet." They should still be roaming around the Orc Empire. Grant promptly answered, "All right, Gilbert, you go out with me. The rest of you stay in Tanai. It's best if you call back some of our brothers from the outer perimeter and guard this place well." Han Shuo shot a glance at Gilbert and directly left. The Hydra Lania, who had transformed into her human form, was casually embraced in Gilbert's embrace. When she heard this, she couldn't help but say to Han Shuo, "Master, I can also help." The Hydra was also a lascivious race. In this aspect, it was exactly the same as the Dark Dragon bloodline in the underground world. Last time in the depths of the Dark Forest, this Hydra had attempted to secretly kill Han Shuo and Gilbert. However, it didn't want to benefit Gilbert. Instead, the battle with Gilbert evolved into a physical battle and was subdued by Gilbert using the demonic arts taught by Han Shuo. Currently, the Hydra Lania's strength was obviously inferior to Dark Dragon Gilbert. Once she, who was greedy for sex, was subdued by the Dark Dragon's body, she unknowingly became the weaker party when interacting with the Dark Dragon. Even Dark Dragon Gilbert was Han Shuo's magical pet. She, the Hydra, naturally also addressed Han Shuo as master. Frowning, Han Shuo thought for a while before shooting a glance at the Hydra and said, "You stay here for the time being. It's not good to have an expert overseeing this place." "All right, you stay here." Gilbert glared at the Hydra Lania and berated, "Whatever master says, you don't need to have any objections in the future." Lania smiled coquettishly and softly, "All right, I'll stay here and help you guard the door." Seeing that Han Shuo didn't have the ruthless appearance of the last time, the Hydra Lania slowly relaxed. Her speech and actions were also no longer as restrained. Han Shuo didn't say anything more. He shot a glance at Dark Dragon Gilbert and leaped into the sky. Gilbert understood and flew under Han Shuo's feet, bringing Han Shuo and flying high in the sky. "Master, where should we go?" After flying high in the sky with Han Shuo, Gilbert couldn't help but ask, "We're not going anywhere. Just stay high in the sky for me," Han Shuo instructed. 12 mystical demons floated out one by one and flew towards the various major powers in the Valley of Sunshine. The Valley of Sunshine was only so big. There shouldn't be many people who would dare to make a move against Trunks. It was nothing more than those who were afraid that Trunks would threaten their positions. Han Shuo didn't need to think to know that Trunks' disappearance was definitely related to those people. Come to think of it, when the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's strength gradually rose and possessed the power to govern the Valley of Sunshine, Trunks naturally became a serious thorn in the flesh for some other powers. They wouldn't be satisfied if they didn't eradicate Trunks' Soul Destroyer mercenary band. The 12 mystical demons scattered and lingered around the Valley of Sunshine. They flew towards the Cairo mercenary band, the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, the House of Minlo, and the Katter Orc tribe. Even Janet's bandits and some of the smaller powers had a mystical demon pay them a visit. With the existence of these 12 mystical demons, all the major powers in the Valley of Sunshine were under Han Shuo's surveillance. The Valley of Sunshine was only so big. Those who made a move against Trunks would definitely be exposed. Han Shuo was absolutely certain of this. Asterisk, 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 in the depths of a dense forest dozens of miles away from the Valley of Sunshine, there was an extremely secretive cave. The surroundings were tightly covered by tree branches, and the inside of the cave was extremely narrow and difficult to walk through. However, in the depths of such a cave, Trunks' miserable cries could be heard. A pair of thick black shackles had bound Trunks' hands and feet. There was even a long and thin iron chain fastened to Trunks' shoulder blade. Thunder Archmage Asa, who followed Florida from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, was glaring viciously at Trunks. As he waved the magic staff in his hand, streaks of snake-like lightning struck Trunks' body, adding even more black scars to Trunks' already heavily injured body. "Trunks, to think that you would have such a day. You didn't think that this day would come when you killed my father Gustav, did you?" Thunder Archmage Asa stared hatefully at Trunks, chanting venomously in a low voice as he happily struck Trunks' body with bolts of lightning. "That old dog deserves to die, Arg." Trunks suddenly howled in pain as a bolt of lightning suddenly struck his mouth, leaving a black scar on his lips. Two streaks of blood slowly flowed out from the corners of his mouth. Trunks, who was covered in cuts and bruises, was firmly shackled. There were experts from various powers watching over him in the surroundings. Asa had come to vent his anger on Trunks because of his endless hatred towards Trunks. If it wasn't for the tacit understanding between the experts, Trunks would have likely been cruelly killed by Asa on the first day he was captured. Trunks' heart was also filled with endless hatred as he looked at Asa, who was continuously striking him with lightning. He had never expected that this Thunder Archmage Asa, who had always followed Florida, would actually be the biological son of the Butcher Gustav. No wonder the Butcher and the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band were so friendly, and Florida regarded Asa so highly. So this was the reason. Heh, although I can't kill you, I will slowly torture you. The Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band has developed rapidly these 2 years, but so what? Haha, in these 2 days, the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band will be annihilated by our combined forces. When the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band is finished, I will slowly skin you alive, slice by slice. You still want revenge? You will never have the chance. That Annie that you treat like your own sister, not only has Florida ridden her, my father and I have also played with her. What can you do? Aren't you still tied up by me like a dog? The only thing you can do is wait for death, Asa hooted crazily as bolts of lightning descended. I will kill you bastards, I promise. Trunks couldn't help but roar in anger as he listened to Asa's narration. The chains on his body clanked as if he was about to go crazy. Chapter 401. Without expending much effort, Han Shuo had discovered the whole story through the mystical demons. The mastermind behind the attack against Trunks and the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band was Florida of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band. Not only did the House of Minlo participate, but Loriton of the Cairo Mercenary Band was also a participant. There were no eternal friends in this world, only eternal benefits. This sentence revealed the essence of the matter. Back when Loriton and Florida were fighting for power, Han Shuo and Trunks had stood together with Loriton. On the night that Loriton was besieged by 4 forces in the Little Valley, it was Han Shuo who helped Loriton walk out alive. From then on, the Cairo Mercenary Band and the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band had a close relationship. Loriton and Trunks had cooperated many times. In the eyes of outsiders, the Cairo Mercenary Band and the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band had already formed an alliance. However, with the rapid development of the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band and Han Shuo's influence in the Lancelot Empire, the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band had actually become the 5th major power in the Valley of Sunshine. In recent days, after Trunks had killed Butcher Gustav, the people in Tanai of Sunshine were in a state of panic. Loriton and Florida, who had originally been the most hopeful to control the Valley of Sunshine, finally realized that something was wrong. When their own interests were threatened, their friendship and alliance were as fragile as a politician's oath, easily torn apart. Florida and Loriton hit it off. Due to Han Shuo heavily injuring Adam Minlo, he was also very willing to participate in this sinister plot that had been planned for a long time. In the end, Trunks was ambushed by Loriton and the others on his way back from Janet's place. Some of the mercenaries by Trunks' side were completely annihilated. Trunks himself was captured alive and imprisoned in a hidden cave, guarded by experts jointly dispatched by several major powers. The reason why they didn't immediately kill Trunks was because Loriton and the others coveted the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band's wealth. On the other hand, they weren't too clear about the detailed layout of the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band's lair. They planned to ask Trunks about it before taking action. This way, they could also reduce their own losses. However, Trunks' tenacity was somewhat unexpected. Under the layers of torture, Trunks did not reveal the truth as they had hoped. That was why he was tortured until he was covered in cuts and bruises and was on the verge of death. Currently, in a mansion guarded by Tanai and the Cairo Mercenary Band, the 3 forces were discussing when to attack the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band. The Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band had existed in the Valley of Sunshine for such a long time. Even if Trunks didn't mention their true location, Loriton and the others would already know. If it wasn't for the fact that they understood that the terrain of that place was indeed too dangerous, they would have already joined forces to flatten the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. They definitely wouldn't have waited until now to act. Over the past few days, the three parties had sent people to search the area. They had a rough understanding of the defensive strength on the surface and were prepared to take action in the next few days. The major forces in the Valley of Sunshine had gone through a series of expeditions. All of them had suffered great losses. Ever since Light Archmage Ferguson had been killed by Han Shuo, Florida's relationship with the Church of Light had weakened. However, due to the existence of a mithril mine here, Florida's relationship with the Church of Light had stabilized. Due to Han Shuo's existence, Dark Grand Magus Edwin of the Calamity Church naturally wouldn't go against the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Edwin and the Calamity Church, who had originally cooperated with Loritan, had gradually distanced themselves from Loritan. However, Edwin had sought out Trunks a few times, but Trunks had rejected his kind intentions to help. After Trunks had gone missing this time, Edwin of the Calamity Church had indeed put in quite a bit of effort and had already found out the general truth of the matter. However, with the three major powers in the Valley of Sunshine working together, the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band and the Church of Light aiding them, Edwin didn't dare to act blindly without thinking, even though he understood the ins and outs of the matter. The 12 mystical demons spread out. One scene after another was reflected into Han Shuo's mind through the mystical demon's vision. Han Shuo, whose brain had been miraculously expanded by the demonic arts, methodically absorbed each scene into his mind. He analyzed the content and movements of their speech, slowly prying into the truth. He had also found out the true location where Trunks had been imprisoned. Dark Dragon Gilbert hovered in the air above the Valley of Sunshine. White clouds floated around Gilbert. Gorgeous sunlight sprinkled into the Valley of Sunshine from above, illuminating Gilbert's body with a pitch-black luster. Sitting cross-legged on Gilbert's back, which was even wider than a horse carriage, Han Shuo, who had been receiving information with his eyes closed, suddenly slowly opened his bright eyes. He glanced at the lush trees in the Valley of Sunshine beneath his feet. Han Shuo's eyes grew brighter and brighter. I need to settle the matters in the Valley of Sunshine as soon as possible. My footsteps cannot stop at the Valley of Sunshine, Han Shuo murmured. The matters of Bretel City, the matters of the 7 Grand Duchies, the struggle for power within the Empire, the constant harassment from the Church of Light, the secret of the skeletal staff in the Cemetery of Death, the exploration of demonic arts and necromancy magic, the jealousy between a few women. All these matters were placed in front of Han Shuo. There were simply too many matters waiting for Han Shuo to deal with. Han Shuo felt as if he couldn't split himself into two. Han Shuo's horizons were growing higher and higher. His ambition and desire were directly proportional to the growth of his strength. Now that he saw all the chaos in the Valley of Sunshine, Han Shuo felt that it wouldn't be too difficult to deal with the disturbances in the Valley of Sunshine. Ever since Trunks had been captured, Han Shuo had the idea of settling the matters of the Valley of Sunshine once and for all. Let's go. Descend. Han Shuo instructed Dark Dragon Gilbert, pointing out the correct location for Gilbert. Master, you found Trunks? Gilbert couldn't help but feel a bit puzzled when he saw Han Shuo suddenly pointing out a location in the sky after having been silent for a long time with his eyes closed. Of course. The place we're going to now is the direction where Trunks was captured. Han Shuo replied, then urged, all right, let's hurry up. ******* In the depths of the gloomy cave, Thunder Archmage Asa was still tirelessly torturing Trunks. The originally crazily roaring Trunks' body had been pierced by a powerful electric current. In addition, Asa had also burned him with a red-hot iron. His body and soul had long since been unable to bear it, and he had fainted. However, Asa obviously had no intention of letting Trunks go. Every time Trunks fainted, Asa would cruelly wake him up. After a few times, Trunks was on the verge of death and no longer had the strength to roar. Only a pair of soulless eyes calmly looked at Asa with a bone-deep hatred, containing a light that made Asa's heart tremble. The guilty Asa was somewhat afraid of the bone-deep hatred in Trunks' eyes. However, this feeling of guilt quickly turned into an even more frenzied torture. When a red-hot iron once again landed on Trunks' chest, Trunks could only open his mouth in pain, unable to even let out a single groan. However, his face revealed a terrifying malevolence, as if he was a demon that had just walked out from the depths of hell. Lord Asa, you can stop now. Otherwise, he will die immediately. A swordmaster named Trulla walked over with a frown. He reached out and forcefully snatched away the iron that Asa had been tightly holding. Asa gloomily glared at Trulla and said with displeasure, "Trulla, your matters are none of the business of the House of Menlo. I have no interest in caring about you. However, Trunk's life must be kept. This is a decision that the leaders of the three parties have all agreed on. No matter how you torture Trunks, as long as he doesn't die, I have no opinion. However, if you kill him, we will all bear the crime of dereliction of duty. Don't make trouble for us." Trulla wasn't afraid of Asa. He casually put the iron back in its original position and said coldly. Some of the wounds on Trunk's body had already rotted, and pus was still flowing out from his chest and neck. Standing so close, Trulla could smell a nauseating odor. He couldn't help but cover his mouth and waved his hand in disgust. "Damn it, you really suffered. Let's forget about it today. You can play with him when his body is better. Otherwise, everyone will have an opinion." As Trulla spoke, he had long since impatiently walked into the distance. The few people from the Cairo mercenary band all looked at Asa with displeasure. One of them replied, "Asa, your Florida has already agreed. You better know your place and don't break the rules." The others in the cave all revealed displeasure. Even the people from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band who had been guarding this place with Asa all advised Asa not to look for trouble. After thinking for a moment, Asa turned his head to look at Trunks, who had fainted once again and was on his last breath, feeling a bit better. With so many people dissuading him, Asa didn't dare to act rashly in order to avoid inciting public anger. Only then did he resentfully drop the matter. He also somewhat understood in his heart that his position in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band was no longer as secure due to the death of his father Gustav. What was more hateful was that after his father Gustav died, the group of bandits split up and didn't give him any face at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed to continue staying in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band to suffer. Just as Asa was letting his thoughts run wild, heavy sounds came from outside the cave. The footsteps were extremely light at first, but gradually became clearer. "Who is it?" Asa was in a bad mood and loudly scolded. "Don't you know to announce your name when coming over?" The footsteps still slowly approached, but the newcomer didn't answer. Asa couldn't help but scold again. "You motherf asterisk cur, are you a mute? Don't you know how to speak?" Something's not right. Trulla of the House of Menlo frowned, the long sword in his hand suddenly appearing in his hand as he spoke to the people beside him. "Only we know of this place. What could be wrong? What a suspicious person. Aren't those fellows delivering food now? It must be them." Asa took the opportunity to say a few words to Trulla. The footsteps were still approaching, each step containing a strange rhythm that actually gave people a feeling of trepidation. It was as if a demon was slowly drifting in, ready to slice its ghastly mouth into your neck in the darkness at any time. Trulla disdainfully rolled his eyes at Asa, thinking that this bandit's son wasn't a proper mercenary after all. Whether it was the Cairo mercenary band, the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, or the House of Menlo, they were all highly disciplined groups. They definitely wouldn't act like this without giving a signal. "Brothers, be careful. The situation is a bit strange." Trulla tightly gripped the long sword in his hand as he instructed the people on his side. Some of the experienced mercenaries of the Cairo mercenary band had already gathered together cautiously without Trulla's orders. Even the people of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band on Asa's side had clearly separated themselves from the other two powers. At such a crucial moment, the three powers that had united because of benefits would still only believe in the people around them, and not this kind of fake alliance that had reluctantly cooperated because of benefits. The Valley of Sunshine was such a place. They were and would be enemies in the future, but now they were standing together safe and sound, intending to face a common enemy. Tap, tap. The footsteps grew closer and closer, clearer and clearer. Trulla flicked a glance at the fire adept mage beside him and said, "Send a stream of flames in." After the fire adept mage heard Trulla's orders, a fire serpent slithered into the tunnel. The grayish-brown stone walls were clearly visible as the fire serpent slithered past. At this moment, even Asa knew that something was wrong. He carefully looked at the only tunnel entrance with Trulla. The people on the Cairo mercenary band's side had tacitly formed a square formation, ready to deal with the incoming attack at any time. Just as everyone's gazes and attention were focused on the only tunnel entrance, a series of crisp sounds suddenly sounded from Trunk's position behind them. Everyone who had been staring at the tunnel entrance with glittering eyes turned their heads in unison when they heard such a loud noise in the silence. Next to Trunks, Han Shuo, wielding the Demon's Lair edge, had a gloomy expression as he cut off the iron chains on Trunks' body one by one. The highly durable iron chains mixed with newly mined mithril shattered with crisp sounds. The slender and long iron chains that were embedded into Trunks' shoulder blades were also carefully removed by him. Trulla and the others who had suddenly turned around didn't know how Han Shuo had entered. There was only that one tunnel in the belly of the mountain where the sound of footsteps could still be heard. All of their attention had been focused on that area, but they really hadn't seen anyone walk out from within. However, Han Shuo had suddenly appeared out of thin air, as if he had been standing there all along. His arrival was so abrupt and strange, giving people an incomparably awkward feeling. Seeing the gloomy face of Han Shuo appear, the hearts of all those guarding Trunks in the cave trembled in an instant. Seeing that Han Shuo didn't look them in the eye and only focused on removing Trunks' restraints with a gloomy face, for some unknown reason, a feeling called fear gradually grew in their hearts. Han Shuo wasn't in the Valley of Sunshine, but legends about him had always been circulating in the Valley of Sunshine. The group of people in the belly of the mountain, including Asa and Trulla, were all experts of the three forces. Not only did they all recognize Han Shuo, some of them had even seen Han Shuo's methods with their own eyes. Now, Han Shuo had appeared soundlessly in the middle of this narrow mountain belly like a ghost. He only had a gloomy face and didn't say a word as he helped Trunks remove his restraints. The silent pressure was as heavy as a mountain, giving everyone a flustered and palpitating feeling. Ace's lips were a bit dry. One of his hands had been cut off by Han Shuo, and Tanai had personally witnessed every heavy blow Han Shuo had used to kill Ferguson. After Han Shuo had left, his legend hadn't disappeared. It had spread to Tanai through the mercenaries who had traveled far and wide, especially the story of Han Shuo killing Dragon Knight Kelt. Asa was well aware of the relationship between Han Shuo and Trunks. Seeing Han Shuo's gloomy face removing the restraints for the dying Trunks, a chill suddenly spread throughout Asa's body. His mind was spinning rapidly, and he only looked at Han Shuo for a dozen seconds before he suddenly made an incomparably wise decision. Whoosh! Asa was the first to drill into the passage to leave the cave. He actually made the move to flee without a fight. Damned bastard! Trulla glanced back and cursed Asa's shamelessness and cowardice in a low voice. Soon after, he also became a bit timid. He tightened the long sword in his hand, looked at the cold and detached Han Shuo, and pretended to be strong as he said, "Earl Brian, this matter has nothing to do with you. You have no right to interfere in the matters of our Valley of Sunshine. If you leave now, we won't stop you. Otherwise, Asa, why have you returned?" Before Trulla could finish speaking, the fire archmage beside him suddenly cried out in surprise. Trulla was stunned, but didn't blame his subordinate for interrupting his threatening words that he had finally mustered up the courage to say. He looked back and saw Asa retreating step by step with a bitter face. Thud thud. The sound of footsteps still echoed in the passage, but the hearts of those present grew even heavier. Chapter 402. A 2.5-meter-tall creature made entirely of white bones walked in leisurely, his messy frame swaying. This creature was made purely of bones. The bones on his body were as sharp as spears, blooming exaggeratedly like flower petals, completely blocking the narrow passageway. With every step he took, a thick aura of death assaulted everyone's senses, as if reminding everyone that he was a creature that didn't belong to this world. As a high-level undead creature, The bone demon was bound by the power of the contract to descend into this world. He carried with him the aura of death and desolation unique to the netherworld, and was filled with disgust towards the creatures of this world. With his high intelligence, he could even sense the fear of the creatures in front of him. When he reached the entrance of the cave, the power of the contract formed an order for him to stop. He had originally intended to kill the creature in front of him, but he had already violently struggled against the spellcaster. He understood that releasing the power of the contractor was enough to destroy him, so he didn't resist. When everyone in the belly of the mountain looked at Asa, they naturally also saw the tall bone demon completely blocking the exit. Behind the swaying, sharp bones of the bone demon came the dull sound of footsteps, beating on everyone's flustered hearts like the beating of a drum. In a few breaths of time, a few balls of ghostly flames lit up behind the bone devil. The ghostly flames were like a few small lanterns, slowly approaching along with the footsteps. When they arrived behind the bone devil, everyone could see the shadows of a few huge knights blocking the cave tightly with the help of those balls of ghostly flames. At this point, everyone in the belly of the mountain knew that the only way out had been sealed. If they wanted to leave the belly of the mountain, they could only kill the bone demon and the evil knights inside. However, aside from the bone demon and a few evil knights, would there be even more densely packed undead creatures behind them? If there really were a large number of undead creatures in the narrow cave, it would be practically impossible for them to escape alive without a light mage. These people's minds quickly turned, and when they saw that the undead creatures had no intention of entering the cave, their restless hearts temporarily calmed down. They couldn't help but cast their gazes back at Han Shuo. At this time, Han Shuo had already cut off all the iron chains on Trunks' body. Several colorful medicines were applied to Trunks' body, and the rotting wounds and pus were also cleaned by Han Shuo. During this process, Han Shuo's gloomy face was a bit frightening. "O'Brien, this has nothing to do with you. You've saved Trunks, which means you've become enemies with the three great powers of the Valley of Sunshine. Think clearly." Trulla's lips quivered for a while, before he braced himself and spoke to Han Shuo. Han Shuo didn't reply, and didn't even turn his head to look at Trulla. He only pressed his right hand against Trunks' back, and streaks of black light entered Trunks' body from an angle they couldn't see. The unconscious Trunks could only feel the life force that had been draining away slowly returning. Gradually, Trunks even felt a trace of strength. With an unforgettable hatred, Trunks weakly shouted, "Asa, I'm going to kill you. I won't let you off even in death." Thunder Archmage Asa had obviously heard Trunks' subconscious shout, and his face immediately turned as white as paper. He tightened his grip on his magic staff, and his eyes flickered as he turned his head to look behind him. However, when he saw the ghastly flames in the eyes of the bone demon and the evil knight's fire-breathing warhorse, he abruptly turned his head back. After a soft shout, Trunks slowly regained consciousness. As his life force and strength gradually recovered, Trunks opened his eyes with some difficulty. The first thing that entered his eyes was Han Shuo's frighteningly gloomy face. However, Han Shuo, who would be frighteningly gloomy in anyone's eyes, caused Trunks to be extremely excited when he saw him. The corners of his mouth twitched with a silent, bitter smile, and he slowly said with dry lips, "Brian, you've come?" Nodding, Han Shuo sighed softly and said, "I've come a bit late. You're already so heavily injured." "I'm not dead yet, so it's not too late. As long as I don't die, I still have hope for revenge. Even if the tendons in my arms and legs are torn, at least I still have my teeth. I want to swallow those bastards alive." Trunks' voice wasn't loud, but the hatred contained within it was enough to make one shiver. On the other side, Asa suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. His eyes rapidly swiveled, and he immediately shot a meaningful glance at Chilula. On the other side, Chilula was silently communicating with the Cairo mercenary band. The three powers had unwittingly gradually pulled closer to each other. Faced with a common enemy, they obviously knew what to do. Han Shuo paid no attention to the actions of the people next to him, and only looked at Trunks. After Trunks finished speaking, he finally opened his mouth and said, "Don't worry, you've eaten a rebirth pill. Even if the tendons in your arms and legs are torn, I can still restore you to your original state. Gilbert, come out and look after Trunks for me. Han Shua loudly shouted behind Trunks. A rustling sound came from the underground behind Trunks, and Dark Dragon Gilbert crawled out from a hole in the ground. When the mystical demons spied on the inhuman torture that Trunks was suffering, Han Shua abandoned Dark Dragon Gilbert and came up from underground as fast as he could. The only exit was sealed off by his undead creatures. When Han Shua opened up the tunnel to Trunks' side, Dark Dragon Gilbert was still in the tunnel, so he was a few beats slower. After Dark Dragon Gilbert came out, he only took a single glance at Trunks before his eyes turned scarlet red. He immediately roared in rage. I'm going to eat you all. Gilbert had been hanging out with Trunks during this period of time, and unknowingly, a friendship had formed. Trunks was a good person and treated Gilbert very well. Other than being a bit lascivious, Dark Dragon Gilbert was still very upright. When he saw Trunks being tortured to the point where he didn't look like a human or a ghost, he could no longer hold back the rage in his heart. Pressing down on Gilbert, Han Shua instructed with a cold face, "Look after Trunks well in this cave. Leave the people inside the mountain to me." "Master, I want to kill them. I want to avenge Trunks." Gilbert simply couldn't bear to see Trunks' miserable state, and his voice even carried a hint of sobbing. This was caused by Gilbert's excessive anger and bitterness. "Don't worry, there will be a chance. You and Trunks will have a chance," Han Shua solemnly guaranteed, and once again instructed, "Look after Trunks well. Don't let him suffer any more injuries." Forcefully holding back the tears that were about to overflow, Gilbert nodded in agreement with a choked voice. He took a bucket of water and helped Trunks clean up the stinking wounds. Gilbert repeatedly choked out, "Damn it. How could you be so careless, idiot?" To Trunks, the pain had already numbed his senses. However, when he saw the black dragon sobbing with his emotions revealed, and Han Shua's handsome face had turned hideous due to forcefully suppressing his rage, a warm feeling mixed with the magical yuan that Han Shua had sent into his body, slowly nourishing Trunks' scarred body and mind. What do you want? I am not afraid of you. You better think this through." Seeing that Han Shua had stabilized Trunks' injuries and was walking over with a gloomy face, Asa shouted in a threatening manner. Han Shua didn't waste any more words with them. He suddenly transformed into a blood-colored rainbow and landed in the middle of these people with lightning speed. His fists and legs were unleashed, and the scalp-numbing sounds of bones breaking rang out in the belly of the mountain. In such a narrow area, the advantages of Han Shua's magical yuan were fully displayed. Under the ferocious punches and kicks, no one could withstand Han Shua's attacks. The strongest ones here were Swordmaster Tsula and Lightning Archmage Asa. To the current Han Shua, they were of no threat at all. In just a few minutes, the 15 experts guarding Trunks in the belly of the mountain not only had their bones broken, but the tendons in their arms and legs were also severed. To swordsmen and knights who cultivated fighting aura, this kind of injury meant that they were completely crippled. As for the magi like Asa, apart from this kind of injury, their tongues had also been cut off by Han Shua, making it impossible for them to release a single spell. "I won't kill you all. When Trunks recovers, he will slowly skin you all alive. This is the only way to compensate for a portion of the injuries he has suffered." Han Shua gazed at Asa, who was lying there like a pile of rotten meat, foaming with blood due to having his tongue cut off, and calmly announced their fates. Asa, whose tendons in his arms and legs were severed, couldn't even let out a cry of pain. His eyes were dyed with the color of deep despair and regret. He regretted not killing Trunks earlier, regretted not disregarding everything and killing Han Shua when he first arrived in the Valley of Sunshine. Gilbert's choked voice gradually returned to normal due to the pain of these murderers. Trunks' weak body also slowly regained strength. Under the effect of Han Shua's magical yuan and Gilbert's support, he was even able to stand up with great difficulty. Looking at Ace's miserable appearance, Trunks suddenly began to laugh crazily. His owl-like laughter was filled with endless resentment and unspeakable carefreeness. Like a ferocious ghost, Trunks laughed crazily. The pain and depression of the past few days seemed to be released in his laughter. As he laughed, he stared unwaveringly at Asa. That gaze of unforgettable resentment was like an ice prison imprisoning Asa, bringing him a bone-chilling coldness. Asa understood that he would suffer even more pain this time in Trunks' hands. Having vented his anger on Trunks, Asa had no doubt that once Trunks recovered his strength, he would really torture him to death. With his current crippled body and tongue cut off, there was nothing but despair in Asa's heart. Unfortunately, he couldn't even beg for death in his current condition. He could only wait for the endless pain that was about to come. After a long time, Trunks, who was laughing madly, gradually calmed down. He laughed so hard that tears were flowing out of his eyes. He calmed his emotions and was silent for a moment. His voice was much deeper than his laughter. Brian. This time it was Loriton, Florida, and Adam Minlow who had joined forces. Otherwise, I would have definitely been able to escape. Only the thrice berserk Loriton in the entire Valley of Sunshine could fight against Trunks, who had reached the level of a great swordmaster. It was because of his confidence that he dared to act so fearlessly. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the shamelessness and despicableness of others, thus falling into an ambush and being captured alive. Don't say any more. I know everything. None of them will escape revenge. I promise. Han Shuo took a deep breath and promised Trunks with a darkened face. Brian, I didn't expect Loriton to act so quickly despite all my calculations. Really, just before that night, Loriton was still drinking and chatting merrily with me. Ha! I was too naive to have neglected him. Trunks laughed wryly at himself, but the resentment towards Loriton in his tone was completely exposed. Loriton. Han Shuo murmured to himself, his eyes gradually turning cold. Master, Trunks' health is still very bad. We shouldn't stay in this place for long. Let's leave immediately. Gilbert wiped away the tears that had accidentally appeared at the corner of his eyes. He ignored the filth and stench on Trunks' body and lifted him up. Han Shuo nodded calmly in agreement. The bone demon that had been blocking the entrance suddenly walked out, and a few zombie warriors followed closely behind. Under Han Shuo's orders, they propped up the lumps of soft flesh on the ground. During this process, Han Shuo ordered the bone demon to provide 10 or so bones. Each zombie warrior used the sharp bones to pierce through the legs of these people like roasted fish and prop them up, bringing them unimaginable pain. Let's go, Han Shuo said. As the incantation sounded, the undead creatures in the depths of the passageway disappeared one by one, and the passageway became spacious again. Now that things had developed to this point, it was obviously impossible to exterminate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band by capturing Trunks without harming their own forces. The three powers that had been at war with each other for a long time knew that this would result in even more losses, but they couldn't care less. After the three issued their orders, the Cairo Mercenary Band, the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, Adam Minlow Mercenary Band, and even the 5 or 6 other small mercenary bands that had been promised great benefits, gathered over 6,000 people at an extremely fast speed and brazenly set off towards the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band. When these people reached the area where the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band was located, they had no choice but to stop. The mercenary band leaders gathered together and began to discuss how to attack the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band. The terrain where the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band was located was incomparably special. It was located on a protruding rock wall below a cliff, like a large flat cake suspended halfway up a mountain. From below, this place was a vast expanse of whiteness, completely covered by fog. There was only one path down from the top of the cliff. However, if they were to slide down from above, the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band would naturally discover it. The process of attacking from above would be an incomparably painful affair. It was certain that the losses of the three powers would far exceed their expectations. As the saying goes, it's easy to climb up a mountain, but difficult to descend. This saying was equally true in such a situation. Siege battles had always been extremely arduous and cruel. That was because the process of climbing up from below the city walls was truly too cruel and painful. However, during the process of climbing up from below the city walls, although it was extremely disadvantageous to face attacks from above, they could at least clearly look up at the sky and use the weapons in their hands to block the incoming attacks. However, in this place, when descending from the cliff, they would have to face the attacks from below painfully. They might even be unable to see the situation below. On one hand, it was because of the fog. On the other hand, the process of descending had to be even more cautious than the process of climbing up. If they were not careful, they would fall to their deaths. It was indeed an incomparably wise decision for Trunks to find such a place to be the headquarters of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. This place was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Anyone who attempted to enter would have to pay an unimaginable price. It was precisely because of this that even though Loriton and the others had captured Trunks alive, they didn't dare to rashly attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. However, after Trunks was rescued, they still had no choice but to face this special terrain. Just the method of entering alone had already caused them to debate for a long time. Loriton and the other two were the astute and circumspect type. They understood that the first to descend would definitely suffer the greatest losses. Naturally, they didn't want to be the first to descend. However, the others weren't fools. No one was willing to be the vanguard of such a life-risking attack. Therefore, when they truly needed to attack, the group suddenly stopped. After discussing and pushing, no one dared to let their subordinates be the first to descend. Once they thought of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's strength that wasn't inferior to theirs, coupled with such an easy-to-defend and difficult-to-attack terrain, Loriton had a headache and didn't know what to do. Why don't we stand guard on the cliff? They can't always stay below. Otherwise, food and water will become a problem. As long as they emerge from below, with our strength, we can easily kill them. If we descend, we will face cruel attacks. However, it will also be very difficult for them to climb up. If we block here, we can force them to death. Florida's face was gloomy as he proposed this vicious plan. Everyone actually knew that this plan was useful. However, this way, the battle between the two sides would become a long tug of war. No one could estimate how much food the Soul Destroyer mercenary band had. If they really dragged this on, they didn't know if there would be any problems with their own lair. You all know that that fellow called Gilbert is a dark dragon. In addition, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band also has mages that can use levitation spells to fly out. If they leave and use their space rings to transport food, who knows how long we'll have to waste. I don't think this method is advisable. Adam Minlo, the patriarch of the House of Minlo, thought for a while and suddenly voiced his objection. Then what do you think we should do? Seeing that his suggestion had been rejected, Florida's face turned even uglier. He looked at Adam Minlo with disdain and asked. After a moment of silence, Adam Minlo seemed to have made up his mind. He lifted his head to look at Loriton and Florida and said in a low voice, "Our family still has a batch of tamed flying magical beasts. Together with some of the flying magical beasts we have now, we can carry 300 people at a time. If these 300 people are experts from our three great powers, we can use large-scale destructive magic to block them for a while. Then, we can use flying magical beasts to transport them back and forth. In this way, I don't think we need to go through the slow process of descending." Hearing these words, everyone was overjoyed. Florida also smiled excitedly and said, "Old thing, you obviously have good things in your hands. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Adam Minlo's gloomy face twitched. He thought to himself, "Those are my treasures. I was originally planning to keep them for last to deal with you guys. If it wasn't for the fact that I had no other choice, why would I take them out?" Of course, Adam Minlo naturally wouldn't say these words. Hence, he remained silent with a gloomy face. This way, everything can be solved. If we eliminate Soul Destroyer this time, your House of Minlo will have the greatest merit. Come, let's discuss in detail and see how many experts each family will send." Loriton laughed heartily and called out to the leaders of the small powers in the distance. After bringing Trunks into the interior of the mountain, Han Shuo finally walked out of the cave after 1 day and 1 night. Gilbert and the others came after hearing the news. When Gilbert saw Han Shuo, he hurriedly asked, "Master, how is Trunks?" "Don't worry, Trunks will be as good as new after a month of recuperation." Han Shuo comforted Trunks. Shortly after, he said with a gloomy face, "The three great powers have brought a few small mercenary bands nearby and are discussing how to attack us. This time, there are 6,000 people. We must treat them with caution. We also have more than 1,700 people here. Relying on the advantage of the terrain, they won't be able to easily attack. Humph, the leader has been tortured to this state by them. We must make them pay the price. Anyone who dares to come down will die in our hands." Grant and Trunks had been friends for many years and had worked together in the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band for a long time. When he heard this, he couldn't restrain his anger and shouted. Han Shuo could completely understand Grant's anger, but he still spoke the truth. The House of Minlo has deployed their secret flying magical beasts. A group of magical beasts can bring 300 people down here at once. If there are a few dozen mages among these 300 people, the large area killing magic spells will greatly obstruct us. During this process, the group of flying magical beasts will be able to bring another 300 people in. In this way, the advantage of this place will no longer exist. Therefore, we must not lower our guard and make proper preparations. Otherwise, we will definitely lose this battle. When these words were spoken, Grant was startled and abruptly reacted. He knew that if it was as Han Shuo said, there was simply no way for the 1,700 people of the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band to defend against the attack of 6,000 people. Then what should we do? Grant asked somewhat worriedly. "Master, Lania and I will transform into our original forms and annihilate them in the air." Dark Dragon Gilbert shouted fiercely, making preparations to go all out. "If it's only 300 ordinary swordsmen, you and Lania transforming into your original forms is enough. However, there are still a large number of mages among the 300 experts. Just you and Lania alone will definitely not be able to defend against the attacks of so many experts. In addition, their goal is only to descend here. How many people can you and Lania stop? Although this is an idea, it's not a foolproof plan." Han Shuo glanced at the impulsive Dark Dragon Gilbert and calmly stated the facts. "Then what should we do?" This time, the one who asked was the Hydra Lania. The coquettish Lania and the lewd Gilbert were truly a match made in heaven. Once the two lustful races joined together, the surging emotions made even Han Shuo flabbergasted. "That's right, Master. What do you think we should do?" Gilbert also had a face full of doubt as he asked Han Shuo with a bitter face. "Let's go according to your idea. You and Lania will intercept them in the air. Additionally, I will summon a large number of gargoyles to help you too. When they are about to descend, the archers below will shoot unceasingly. As long as the strongest experts of the three major powers are killed in the first wave, it won't be that easy for them to win this battle." Han Shuo sneered at Gilbert. Loriton and the other two didn't know that their every move was being monitored by Han Shuo. They thought that this attack would be extremely sudden. At the very least, the first wave of flying magic beasts would be able to easily descend and cause great trouble for the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band. Then, they would be able to transport an unending stream of experts down and settle the battle in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, no matter how much they calculated, they never expected that Han Shuo would be able to know all of their intentions. He would be able to calmly arrange everything in advance and give them a head-on attack when they thought they were descending covertly. With a large number of gargoyles, Han Shuo was confident that the first wave would suffer a disastrous blow. Once more than half of the experts in the first wave were killed, not only would it have a huge impact on their morale, the next wave of experts would also not dare to descend on flying magic beasts. Based on the terrain's advantage, Han Shuo believed that the three parties would definitely not be able to get what they wanted. The 12 mystical demons had a panoramic view of the three parties' every move. Han Shuo methodically commanded Grant and the others to gather the mercenaries who were adept at shooting. They arranged the stored crossbows and arrows, and even took out some javelins that could be thrown. They were prepared to deal with the first wave of flying magic beasts. Time passed silently. Loriton and the others had discussed for a long time, and finally decided on a list of 300 people to descend in the first wave. These 300 people would protect dozens of precious mages. The swordsmen who could descend in the first wave were at least senior swordsmen. It could be said that the strongest experts of the major powers were gathered here. The silence of the night could conceal their tracks, and the fog would also be dense at night. Therefore, this time's operation was naturally arranged to take place at night. When the full moon gradually rose into the sky, the gentle and clear moonlight poured down. Looking from below, the towering cliff was shrouded in white fog. More than 200 harpies, frost eagles, griffins, pegasi, and various other flying magic beasts had already been mobilized from within Adam Minlo's family upon his orders. More than 300 experts selected by the major forces were ready to set off. Once the flying magical beasts appeared, under the instructions of the leaders of the 3 major forces, each of them sat on the tamed magical beasts. Adam Minlo and Florida, who were the leaders, also participated in the ride. Florida himself was an archmage and didn't need any flying magical beasts to carry him. Adam Minlo's super-rank magical beast, the golden-winged roc, had finally recovered after spending an enormous amount of money to nurse it back to health. It was just that the feathers on its body were sparse, and it looked a little miserable. This was all because the golden-winged roc had fallen into such a miserable state in order to protect Adam Minlo. It was also because of this that Adam Minlo had attacked Han Shuo out of his endless hatred for Han Shuo. Although Loriton could go berserk thrice, and his strength was a level higher than Adam Minlo and Trunks, he still couldn't fly. In addition, there were more people left here, and they needed someone who could hold the fort and arrange the subsequent matters. Therefore, Loriton stayed behind to preside over the overall situation and didn't join the first wave of attack. Under the hazy moonlight, the flying magic beasts spread their wings and flew away, forming a canopy that blocked the moonlight. Loriton actually felt a little uneasy as he raised his head to watch the flock of magic beasts fly higher and higher. Actually, Loriton had felt uneasy ever since Trunks had been miraculously rescued. This was because no matter how he looked at it, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band should have fallen into a state of panic after losing their leader Trunks. Loriton was well aware of how powerful Dark Dragon Gilbert was. However, Loriton, who had interacted with Dark Dragon Gilbert, understood that Gilbert was only a brute. He definitely wouldn't have any meticulous plans or calm reasoning. The reason why Loriton had waited for so long was because he was certain that the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would leave this natural stronghold and attack. At that time, they would be able to easily annihilate the experts of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band one by one. However, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's calmness had exceeded his expectations. He softly muttered something to his trusted subordinates beside him, as if discussing the details of the upcoming operation. Just as the group passed through the thick fog and arrived at the area where the fog was thinner, they would enter the area where the Soul Destroyer mercenary band was located a few hundred meters away. A huge blurry shadow gradually emerged from the thin fog. Gilbert, who had transformed into a dark dragon, stared at the 300 people with his lantern-like eyes. Without saying a word, he spat out a dragon's breath mixed with a fishy stench. Gilbert, who had evolved into a rank 2 magical beast, had an even more terrifying acidic poison in his breath. In this rather humid area, the power of the acidic poison was greatly increased. The 10 or so swordsmen and mages riding harpies were the first to be sprayed by Gilbert's breath. An extremely stifling feeling suddenly blocked their chests, as if they were suddenly pressed down by a mountain. Apart from the harpies, which were also poisonous magical beasts, the other humans were all dizzy and had streaks of blood flowing out of their mouths and noses. Apart from the acidic poison, the impact of the dragon's breath was equally terrifying. The harpies screeched shrilly as they swayed left and right. The 10 or so humans were thrown away on the spot by the harpies. "Dark dragon! It's that dark dragon!" Horrified cries suddenly rang out. It was obvious that someone had discovered Gilbert's existence. "Heh! You dare to come to my territory. All of you shall die." Gilbert's dignified voice resounded through the sky. With a flick of his thick and long neck, a raging flame shot out, burning another 10 or so scattered magical beasts and humans to the ground. Attack! It's just a dark dragon. There's nothing to be afraid of. Adam Minlow, who came after hearing the news, suddenly shouted. The wings of the golden-winged rock beneath him suddenly set off a hurricane. The hurricane covered an area of more than 10 meters, blowing away the raging flame shot by Dark Dragon Gilbert to the side. Adam Minlow, who was riding the golden-winged rock, shot the spear in his hand towards Dark Dragon Gilbert like lightning. The other magicians, who had stabilized themselves, intertwined their magic and lightning for a moment and shot towards Dark Dragon Gilbert. If it was just Adam Minlow riding the golden-winged rock, Dark Dragon Gilbert would not be afraid. However, just as Han Shuo had said, the first wave of attack that gathered the strongest experts of the three major forces was not something that he, Gilbert, could handle alone. Dozens of magic attacks of various elements suddenly fell. Gilbert had no choice but to temporarily avoid the sharp edge and hide behind the fog. It's just a dark dragon. What can you do? Adam Minlow loudly ridiculed. Shortly after, he waved his hand and said, Our whereabouts have been exposed. We need to hurry and get there. On one hand, you despicably seized the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, and on the other hand, you secretly colluded with the cruelest of bandits. Do you really think you can do whatever you want? Heh, what a pity, what a pity. You're not the only smart person in this world, and you, Florida, don't have the final say. Your grandfather can't protect you for the rest of your life. Now that old thing Ferguson is finished, you won't be able to cause any more trouble. What's the point of talking so much nonsense with you? You're going to die soon anyways. Han Shuo ridiculed Florida and laughed disdainfully. Florida's face looked as if someone had stepped on it with a dirty shoe after Han Shuo's words. It became extremely ugly and gloomy as he glared hatefully at the approaching Han Shuo. Florida took a deep breath and said, Today, either you die or I die. Of course it'll be you who dies. Han Shuo suddenly shouted coldly as he suddenly sped up step by step towards Florida. He was like a bolt of lightning streaking through the sky as he rapidly charged towards Trunks. At the same time, the tens of thousands of gargoyles behind Han Shuo suddenly scattered into groups and flew like locusts towards the experts of the three great powers who were being bitten and torn apart by another group of gargoyles. Little Skull, who was riding the flying bone demon, stood majestically on the back of the bone demon. His purple demon eye sparkled as he sized up the sky. He pointed the 3-meter-long bone spear in his hand at Adam Minlow. The bone demon beneath him flapped its wings and glided towards Adam Minlow. Harpies, frost eagles, pegasi, griffins, wyverns, and various other magical beasts were all tamed by Adam Minlow after expending a great deal of effort. Each of these flying magical beasts could deal with a few gargoyles by themselves. In addition to the fact that they were carrying powerful swordsmen or mages of various elements on their backs, they shouldn't be at too much of a disadvantage. However, the reality wasn't so. An expert riding on a magical beast might be able to deal with a dozen gargoyles, but when a group of gargoyles suddenly charged over, that oppressive aura was enough to shake one's heart. That strong smell of rotting corpses wasn't pleasant to the nose, bringing them more trouble than they could imagine. There were just too many gargoyles. When dozens of gargoyles attacked a magical beast, even the harpies and griffins couldn't handle it. In addition, there were also the two tyrannical super-rank magical beasts, Gilbert and Lania. In just a short while, dozens of people were either bitten to death by the gargoyles or beaten to death by the magical beasts they were riding on, causing them to fall into the endless abyss. Amidst the layers of gargoyles, the little skull wielding a 3-meter-long bone spur was riding on the bone devil in an incomparably awe-inspiring manner. After Little Skull arrived at this area, his purple demon eye flashed, and he made a peculiar gesture towards Dark Dragon Gilbert. Little Skull first used the bone spear to point at Gilbert, then pointed at the others that were desperately resisting the gargoyles. Shortly after, under Gilbert's astonishment, Little Skull used the bone spear to point at Adam Minlow, who was riding on the golden-winged rock, and then used his empty hand to point at himself. After this gesture was completed, Little Skull's purple demon eye flickered, and he looked straight at Dark Dragon Gilbert. Dark Dragon Gilbert's lantern-like dragon eyes foolishly looked at Little Skull. When the Hydralania obstructed Adam Minlow and the golden-winged rock, he cautiously asked, "You mean, you want me to go to other places to attack others, and leave this guy to you?" Little Skull's purple demon eye flashed with a purple light, and he casually nodded at Dark Dragon Gilbert, meaning, "That's right. You should leave quickly. Don't hinder me." Dark Dragon Gilbert was incomparably astonished. He carefully looked at Little Skull and the undead creature under him, and for a moment, he was somewhat stunned. "Damn it, you heartless thing. Quickly come and help me." On the other side, the Hydralania was painstakingly obstructing Adam Minlow's attack. Suddenly, she saw that Dark Dragon Gilbert, who was originally fighting alongside her, was actually stunned there. She couldn't help but hurriedly scold him. Dark Dragon Gilbert suddenly came to his senses and immediately glanced at Little Skull. He saw Little Skull carrying the 3-meter-long bone devil as he arrogantly charged towards Adam Minlow. The 3-meter-long bone spear in his hand pointed at Adam Minlow, and an incomparably huge, deathly aura rippled in all directions. At this moment, Dark Dragon Gilbert truly felt the terrifying mystical power contained within the Little Skull's seemingly small body. Gilbert suddenly understood that although he had evolved into a rank 2 magical beast, Little Skull was even more terrifying than him, and even had the strength to kill him. "Gilbert, Lania, let's go. We'll go kill others, and not waste time with this old thing." Dark Dragon Gilbert, who had understood, suddenly shouted at the Hydralania, "You idiot! Are you crazy? Didn't Master say to let the two of us restrain this old thing? Are you looking for a scolding or a beating? Quickly come and help me." While the Hydralania was speaking, her body gradually disappeared, and soon after, a huge water column fiercely rushed towards Adam Minlow. "Someone here has volunteered to deal with him. Let's not stay here and cause trouble. Let's go." Dark Dragon Gilbert shouted loudly, "You slut, quickly come back." Lania, who had used the water to conceal her body, gradually revealed herself. Suddenly, she saw Little Skull flying over on the bone devil. Suddenly, a feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry arose in Lania's heart. She ridiculed Gilbert. "Stupid dragon. Is this Little Skull the guy who volunteered?" Just as Lania's words fell, the purple demon eye of the Little Skull suddenly lit up with a glaring purple light. The 3-meter-long bone spur in his hand suddenly transmitted a surging death aura, and a gloomy and cold feeling spread in all directions. The Hydralania naturally felt that huge aura and looked at the Little Skull flying over with incomparable horror. She immediately shut her mouth and didn't say a word. Under Dark Dragon Gilbert's urging, the Hydralania no longer hesitated. With incomparable doubts in her heart, she hurriedly avoided the Bone Devil and the Little Skull and flew towards Gilbert's side. What is this Little Skull? Why do I feel a very terrifying power from his body?" The Hydralania arrived beside Dark Dragon Gilbert. She could no longer suppress the doubts in her heart and impatiently asked Dark Dragon Gilbert, "Don't ask me, I don't know either. However, I know that he is the first undead creature that Master possesses. It's just that I can't understand. How can a Little Skull have the same terrifying aura as the Bone Dragon?" Dark Dragon Gilbert blinked his lantern-like big eyes and explained to the Hydralania who came over to inquire about him. After hearing Dark Dragon Gilbert's explanation, the Hydralania was speechless in her heart. She couldn't help but cast her gaze towards Dark Dragon Gilbert's master. In another area 50 meters away from here, Han Shuo was holding the demon's lair edge that was dripping with fresh blood. His face was ruthless and gloomy, and he was currently slaughtering the enemies around him. Florida was holed up within the layers of protection of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. He unceasingly released all kinds of light magic, purifying the surrounding gargoyles that were crazily surging over. Under his light magic, the gargoyles turned into ashes one after another. Among this group, as a light archmage, Florida was the one who posed the greatest threat to the undead creatures. Add to that the fact that he was the leader of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. His subordinates surrounded him in the center and spared no effort to protect him. Florida, whose safety was guaranteed within the crowd, expended all of his strength to chant light magic, purifying the gargoyles that surrounded his area into ashes one after another. Low-level gargoyles were as weak as zombie warriors and were all weakened under the light magic of this light archmage. The battle in the sky was like a raging fire. Only Florida's area didn't have many gargoyles crazily surging in. According to this situation, Florida's area should be the most comfortable group of people among the elites of the three great powers. However, in reality, Florida's area had suffered the most casualties. Seeing his trusted brothers die tragically one by one, Loriton understood that this so-called sneak attack had completely failed. In order to avoid even greater losses, Loriton had no choice but to roar after transforming into a berserk state. Florida and Adam Minlow naturally heard Loriton's roar that resounded through the sky. Without waiting for them to take any action, the surviving experts of the Cairo mercenary band directly descended from the sky without saying a word. Adam Minlow, who was riding the super-rank golden-winged rock, was forced to continuously retreat by the little skull that was wielding a 3-meter-long bone spur. He had never felt so aggrieved and depressed in his entire life. He couldn't understand why the little skull in front of him would actually have such a dense and powerful aura of death. The little skull's 3-meter-long bone spur carried an incomparably terrifying aura of decaying death. Every attack caused Adam Minlow incomparable pain. If it wasn't for the golden-winged rock blocking the attacks for him, Adam Minlow's body would have already been pierced through. "You, what exactly are you?" Adam Minlow had asked this question many times. He could feel that this little skull possessed intelligence, but unfortunately, the little skull didn't answer him. It only waved the bone spur in its hand again and again, forcing Adam Minlow to retreat step by step. "Moss Master, I'm afraid I can't hold on any longer." After helping Adam Minlow withstand a few stabs, the golden-winged rock finally couldn't help but cry out to Adam Minlow. It was also at this moment that Loriton's roar sounded from below. Adam Minlow was only stunned for a moment. When he discovered that the people of the Cairo mercenary band were retreating in an attempt to leave the battlefield, a feeling of helplessness and despair suddenly rose in his heart. "Let's go, we should also retreat." When Adam Minlow said these words, he really felt like crying but had no tears. Adam Minlow, who had pulled out all the trump cards of his family, had originally thought that he could easily destroy the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Who would have thought that the malefic star would once again appear midway, forcibly using the gargoyles that filled the sky to reverse the situation, and even caused great damage to them. Although this batch of attackers only consisted of a mere 300 people, they were the true elites of the three major powers. They were the foundation that they relied on to survive. Every one of them was an expert that could take on 10 people at once. Who would have thought that they would ultimately end up in such a state? A sharp cry suddenly sounded from the golden-winged rock's mouth. The golden-winged rock rolled its body in pain and spoke in human language. "Master, Master, there's movement in my body. I can't anymore." Crisp popping sounds suddenly sounded from within the golden-winged rock's body. The purple demon eye was shining brightly, but Little Skull just looked at Adam Minlow, who was gradually losing consciousness, then turned around and left. After Little Skull killed Adam Minlow, he once again sent a message to Han Shuo for confirmation. "Father, did I do the right thing?" At this point, Han Shuo was completely speechless. Chapter 405. Not only did the Little Skull have intelligence, but he'd also become more sinister and ruthless. This really made Han Shuo not know if he should be happy or sad. However, What Han Shuo could confirm was that the current Little Skull would be able to live a better life in the Netherworld. In that world that was filled with slaughter and invasion everywhere, he should be able to be at ease like this. With the death of the head of the House of Minlo, Florida's willpower that had persisted until now finally collapsed. He no longer dared to continue staying in the air. Florida recklessly shouted for a retreat and flew towards Loritan and the others. Hehe, you still want to escape this time? Han Shua's cold laughter suddenly rang out. With an order, Dark Dragon Gilbert, Hydralania, and Little Skull abruptly gathered at Han Shua's side from all four directions, charging towards Florida together. There were still 20 or so experts from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band surrounding Florida. Once Florida and Loritan converged, it would be extremely difficult to kill him. This time, Han Shuo was determined to get rid of Florida, so as not to leave behind endless troubles for Trunks. When Han Shuo had charged towards Florida alone, the experts protecting Florida had disregarded everything to attack Han Shuo. Although Han Shuo had beheaded a few experts along the way, he still wasn't able to get rid of Florida as he wished. However, with the addition of 2 super-rank magical beasts and the Little Skull, those experts surrounding Florida were no longer a threat. Han Shuo only needed to keep an eye on Florida. The rest would naturally be taken care of by Little Skull and the others. Rain of fire, icicles, wind blades, lightning, and all sorts of other magic attacks rained down on Han Shuo and the others. Because of the appearance of this wave of magic, the dusky sky suddenly became gorgeous, as if a beautiful firework had blossomed. Han Shuo mobilized his magical yuan, and a protective barrier as thin as a cicada's wing wrapped around his body. On the outside, a huge white bone shield with malevolent bone spikes burst out. Most of the magic was blocked by the white bone shield. Dark Dragon Gilbert and Hydralania took the opportunity to spit out acid poison and torrential rain attacks. Han Shuo weaved and dodged in the air with the black protective barrier around him, arriving in front of Florida after a few quick twists and turns. A concentrated wave of bone spears suddenly shot out from Han Shuo's side with a shrill whistle. Florida's group, who were defending against Dark Dragon Gilbert and Hydralania's attacks, appeared to be even more flustered and flustered. At this moment, the Demon's Lair edge in Han Shuo's hand once again disappeared without a sound, gradually closing in on Florida from a direction that couldn't be seen. Little Skull, who was riding on the Bone Demon, had unknowingly appeared behind Florida and the others. He majestically raised his 3-meter-long bone spear, thrusting it towards Florida and the others who had suddenly reacted. The dense aura of death brought with it a desolation and coldness never seen in this world. Behind. Florida's reaction was still relatively quick among this group of people. Once he sensed the violent wind behind him, he immediately realized the danger behind him. Previously, when Little Skull killed Adam Minlo, because Han Shuo had been staring at him in astonishment, Florida and the others who weren't violently attacked by Han Shuo also had the leisure to watch the entire process. Little Skull, who was able to kill Adam Minlo, who was riding on the golden-winged rock, was no less dangerous to Florida than Han Shuo. Therefore, when he saw Little Skull charging over from behind, he immediately shouted. At this point, Florida's side obviously didn't have enough manpower. On both sides were the attacks of Dark Dragon Gilbert and Hydralania. In front of them was the overbearing Han Shuo, and behind them was suddenly an otherworldly expert. He could control one side, but not the other. Facing these waves of attacks that descended at the same time, Florida suddenly felt a strong sense of unease. He looked at Han Shuo, who was charging over with a sneer, and suddenly discovered that the weapon in Han Shuo's hand had disappeared. Florida was immediately scared out of his wits, coming to a sudden realization. Unfortunately, his realization was still a bit too late. The group of experts who were distracted by Little Skull and the other two didn't have the time to pay attention to Florida. When they suddenly heard a loud whistle, they already understood that the situation was far from good. Florida, who had exerted his utmost effort to support the light and lightning defensive spells, still couldn't stop the Demon's Lair edge from taking his life. The lightning and light magic barriers scattered like broken glass. The Demon's Lair edge blasted through Florida's defensive barrier and pierced through Florida's neck, opening a bloody hole in the center of his neck. The hatred in Florida's eyes gradually faded. Without the support of mental strength, Florida's body fell in a straight line. The leader of one of the four major powers in the Valley of Sunshine had finally died in the hands of Han Shuo. When the experts of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band who had surrounded Florida saw that Han Shuo had seized the opportunity to kill Florida, despair and helplessness rose in their hearts. At this moment, the attacks of Little Skull, Gilbert, and the others rained down like a torrential rain, taking away another 10 lives in an instant. With Florida's death, the first wave of experts that had come to attack this time no longer had a leader. The remaining few dozen experts began to retreat with all their might, but were continuously killed by Han Shuo and the others along the way. Another 20 or so people had been killed before they could reach Loritin's side. Of the 300 experts that had gone up, along with many flying magical creatures, only 19 people and 11 magical creatures made it back to Loritin's side. Florida and Adam Minlow of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band had forever disappeared from the stage of the Valley of Sunshine struggle for supremacy. Ha, Loritin, it's been a while. Han Shuo stood proudly in midair and greeted Loritin in a mocking manner. On either side of Han Shuo were the two super-rank magical creatures and Little Skull. Several hundred gargoyles were like guards, silently flapping their wings behind Han Shuo. Having calculated his altitude, Han Shuo wasn't afraid of the arrows from below. Loritin raised his head to look at the sky and saw Han Shuo looking at him mockingly. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. Beside Loritin were the corpses of Florida and Adam Minlow. Loritin should have been happy that two of the leaders of the three great powers had died, but when he looked at Han Shuo, he felt a sense of panic. It has indeed been a long time. I should have known that you would come. Apart from you, Trunks didn't have any other tricks up his sleeve. Loritin first sighed, then took a deep breath. He looked at Han Shuo and said in a low voice, "Now that things have come to this, there's nothing more to say. Indeed, I was the one who captured Trunks, but I don't regret it." With the current situation in the Valley of Sunshine, if Loritin didn't act against Trunks, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would sooner or later replace the Cairo mercenary band's position in the Valley of Sunshine. This could be seen from Trunks' continuous expansion. As the leader of the Cairo mercenary band, Loritin naturally had to think of his subordinates. There was nothing wrong with his actions. Indeed, there's nothing more to say. From today onwards, the Cairo mercenary band will be my mortal enemy. Loritin, you're on your own. Han Shuo smiled as he looked at Loritin. He glanced at Florida and Adam Minlow's corpses one last time before returning to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. These powers had paid a painful price in the first wave of attacks. Not only had they lost their most elite experts, even Florida and Adam Minlow had been killed. In this way, this group that had banded together because of benefits would be helpless against the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Humans were always selfish. With the deaths of Florida and Adam Minlow, Han Shuo was almost certain that the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and Adam Minlow's family would immediately fall into chaos. Especially Florida's Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, it would inevitably fall into a situation of being seized or divided. In this way, this group's threat to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would be greatly reduced. Han Shuo only needed to sit back and watch them fall apart. That was why he had left so confidently. Reality had indeed developed according to Han Shuo's expectations. When Han Shuo left, the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Minlow immediately fell into a quarrel. The Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, in particular, had immediately split into a few small powers after Florida's death. Only a small portion held the intention of avenging Florida, while the majority of the remaining people advocated leaving this troublesome place as soon as possible. The House of Minlow was slightly better. After all, Adam Minlow was their elder. The House of Minlow, whose authority was mainly concentrated in the hands of their relatives, was crying out in grief that they would first avenge Adam Minlow before deciding what to do next. The sudden quarrel had disrupted Loritin's thoughts. Looking at the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band preparing to retreat, as well as the frightened leaders of the small powers, Loritin suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. With so many flying creatures killed, It was completely impossible to rely on flying creatures to enter the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. With the existence of the space ring, it was impossible for Loritan to exhaust the Soul Destroyer mercenary band to death. The only way was to forcefully enter. However, the price they would have to pay for such a forceful attack was simply not something they could accept. For a moment, Loritan didn't have any confidence in victory. Looking at the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Minlo arguing endlessly, he suddenly felt somewhat helpless. Leader, should we take this opportunity to eliminate both of them first? Just as Loritan was feeling vexed, Harris suddenly moved closer and lowered his voice as he suggested maliciously. Glancing at Harris, Loritan looked in the direction Han Shuwa had left in and smiled wryly. That fellow can't wait for us to do that. If we were to fight with both of them now, then it would really be to his liking. When our three sides are almost exhausted, the master of the Valley of Sunshine will really be the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Harris stared blankly for a moment, mulling over Lawrence's words for a while before nodding and saying, Leader is still far-sighted. However, now that Florida and Adam Minlo are dead, we have two fewer enemies. The Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Minlo are no longer a threat. That's true. It's a pity that after this battle, if we can't destroy the Soul Destroyer mercenary band, their reputation will greatly increase. In the future, apart from our Cairo mercenary band, there will no longer be any power that can shake their position. I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse, Loritan said with a headache. Just as Loritan and Harris were discussing in low voices, the leaders of the small mercenary bands walked over together. One of them looked at Loritan with a gloomy face and said, Leader Loritan, at this point, I think we no longer have the chance to destroy the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. If the Cairo mercenary band wants us to be the vanguard and throw our lives away, then I'm sorry, but we're not willing to sacrifice the lives of all our brothers for the benefits you've given us. Since things have come to this, I think we should disperse. Yeah, that place is too hard to attack. Without flying magic beasts, we have no chance of victory. Another leader of a small mercenary band also shouted. It seemed that it wasn't just one or two people who had this kind of thought. These fellows had walked over together, and all of them were probably planning to leave. A bunch of short-sighted fellows. Loritan came to a conclusion about them in his heart. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, Think it over carefully. If we can't destroy the Soul Destroyer mercenary band this time, then I'm afraid that all the teams that participated in attacking them today will suffer a calamity. Our Cairo mercenary band has sufficient strength and isn't afraid of Trunks' revenge. As for you guys, that might be troublesome. There's no need for Leader Loritan to remind us of this. We've naturally thought of it as well. That person replied, Then do as you wish. In any case, I've already reminded you guys. When Trunks comes looking for you for revenge, don't come looking for me. Loritan snorted coldly, feeling that it was beneath him to say anything more to them. These people looked at each other and simultaneously bade farewell to Loritan. They brought their brothers and left this troublesome place. The majority of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band didn't give Loritan any face after Florida's death. They didn't even bid farewell to Loritan and directly left this place. Of the 6,000 people that had come to attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band, only 3,000 remained. Without flying magic beasts, if they wanted to attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's location, it was no longer a matter of how many people they would lose. Instead, it was a matter of whether they could attack after suffering heavy losses. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.